The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Chief Warrant Officer 3, Sarah Chen, sat in the waiting room of the Baltimore Veterans Affairs Medical Center, Southeast Clinic, Building 17, 3rd floor. The plastic chair, government issue, olive drab, serial number stamped on the underside, pressed against her spine at the exact point where the blast wave from the vehicle-borne improvised explosive device had compressed her L3 vertebra on 14 February 2022. The pressure triggered a familiar cascade, a spike of phantom heat across her left shoulder blade, the ghost of burning Nomex, the metallic taste of propellant residue that had been seared into her olfactory nerve endings. She did not flinch. Flinching was a luxury she'd trained out of herself during 4,380 hours of counterintelligence training at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. Instead, she adjusted her weight distribution by 3 degrees, shifted her center of gravity forward, and activated the breathing protocol. 6 seconds inhale, hold for 4, 6 seconds exhale. Her heart rate, which had spiked to 94 beats per minute, descended to 72. The envelope in her hands bore the Department of Veterans Affairs seal. The return address listed the VA Regional Office, 31 Hopkins Plaza, Baltimore, MD 21201. The paper quality was standard government stock, 20-pound, 25% cotton fiber, the same specifications outlined in Federal Acquisition Regulation 13106. She had read enough classified documents in her 15-year career to know that mundane packaging often contained catastrophic information. She opened it. Department of Veterans Affairs. Rating decision. Veteran. Chen, Sarah M. SSN. XXXX. 6847. Claim. Service connection for traumatic brain injury. TBI. Decision. Denied reason. Insufficient evidence of combat exposure per DD Form 214. Certificate of release or discharge from active duty. Records indicate administrative deployment to Camp Lemonnier, Djibouti from January 2022, September 2022. No combat operations documented. No service-connected traumatic event verified. Chen's vision narrowed. Not from emotion. She had learned to compartmentalize emotion in the same way she compartmentalized intelligence reporting, filed according to Intelligence Community Directive 203, but from a symptom. The edges of her visual field pixelated, a 2 mm blind spot appearing at 11 o'clock precisely 15 degrees from center. This was neurological artifact, secondary to diffuse axonal injury sustained when the overpressure wave from 500 kilograms of ammonium nitrate fuel oil mixture had propagated through her skull at 6,900 meters per second. Her left hand tremored. Not fear. Cerebellar disruption. She placed the letter on her lap, pressed both palms against her thighs, and counted backward from 20 in Arabic. Ishrun, Tisa, Ashara, Thamaniya, Ashara. The tremor subsided. The blind spot remained. It would fade in 90 seconds, as it always did. This was her new normal. The normal, the letter claimed, did not exist. Camp Lemonnier, Djibouti. Administrative deployment. No combat operations. She looked at her left forearm. The scar tissue ran from 2 centimeters above the radial styloid process to the olecranon, a branching pattern consistent with secondary fragmentation, steel ball bearings embedded in a matrix of plastique, detonated at a standoff distance of approximately 15 meters. The forensic pathologist at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center had documented it in her medical file. Blast injury pattern consistent with vehicle-borne explosive device. The burn characteristics indicated flame temperature exceeding 2,400 degrees Celsius, hot enough to ignite Nomex fabric. Camp Lemonnier, Djibouti. No combat operations. She had not been in Djibouti on 14th of February 2022. She had been in Aden, Yemen, 1,200 kilometers to the northeast, across the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, latitude 12.7855 Trondheim, longitude 45.187 degrees. She could recite the grid coordinates from memory because she had called in the medevac from that position. Her voice steady despite the ruptured tympanic membrane and the fractured zygomatic arch and the moderate traumatic brain injury that would, 18 months later, result in this letter claiming she had never been there at all. Chen did not go to her scheduled appointment. Instead, she returned to her Honda Civic 2019 model, odometer reading 47 892 miles, Maryland license plate 3CAT247, and drove 22 minutes to her apartment in Catonsville. The building management had coded the entry as Unit 3C, but the lease listed her occupant status as military transitioning. She was 3 months from terminal leave, 4 months from official separation, and 6 months from the GS-13 intelligence analyst position at the Defense Intelligence Agency she had been promised by Brigadier General Marcus Webb. The promise, she now understood, was contingent on silence. Her apartment's second bedroom functioned as an office. The desk, IKEA Mica model, white, purchased June 2023, held her personal laptop, a Dell Latitude 5420, running Windows 11 with BitLocker encryption enabled. She did not use this device for classified work. Classified work occurred on JWIC's terminals in sensitive compartmented information facilities. But unclassified evidence of classified operations existed in gray spaces, fragments that could be reassembled by someone trained in pattern recognition. She opened her desk drawer and retrieved a manila folder. No classification markings, no control numbers, just personal documents, the kind a soldier keeps because regulation requires maintaining copies for 50 years after separation. Inside, her DD Form 214. She spread it on the desk under the adjustable LED lamp, 4,000 Kelvin color temperature, 800 lumens, and examined Section 12, Record of Service. The entries were typed in 10-point Courier font, the standard for military personnel documents since 1997. Section 12C, Service. Active Section 13, Decorations, Medals, Badges, Citations, Defense Meritorious Service Medal, Joint Service Commendation Medal, Army Commendation Medal. 2. Army Achievement Medal. 4. Global War on Terrorism, Service Medal, Armed Forces Service Medal Section. 18. Remarks. Member deployed to Camp Lemonnier, Djibouti, CLDJ, from 15 Jan 2022 to 30 SEP 2022 in Mao. Support of Operation Enduring Freedom, Horn of Africa, OEF-HOA. Duties: counterintelligence support, human operations, liaison coordination, no combat operations. Member performed administrative and analytical functions within secured compound. Chen noted the specificity of the language. Not merely deployed to Djibouti, but within secured compound. Not intelligence operations, but administrative and analytical functions. The phrasing was defensive, preemptive. Someone had anticipated scrutiny. She retrieved a second document from the folder, a photograph 4x6 inches, printed on Kodak photo paper, dated March 2022, based on the XIF metadata she had preserved before printing. The photograph showed Chen standing beside a Yemeni man in his mid-50s, gray beard, white dish dasha, brown eyes with pronounced canthal folds, characteristic of South Arabian ethnicity. Behind them, a concrete building, 3 stories, walls pockmarked with small arms fire. A faded Arabic sign, partially visible, read, Mustashfa al-Jumhuriya Hospital. The GPS coordinates embedded in the original image file, which she had screenshot and saved separately, confirmed the location. 12.7942 degree N, 45.0364 degree IE, Central Aden, Yemen. The man in the photograph was Hassan al-Rashid. She knew this because she had recruited him as a confidential human source on 22 February 2022, 8 days after the VBAD attack. Hassan had served as a physician at Al-Jumhuriya Hospital. He had provided intelligence on Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps activity in Aden, information that led to the interdiction of 3 weapons shipments and the targeting of 2 Quds Force operatives. Hassan al-Rashid was killed on 18 June 2022. U.S. State Department records confirmed his death. The cable traffic, unclassified summary, which she had retained, noted that Dr. al-Rashid had been murdered by unknown assailants in Aden, Yemen, likely in reprisal for cooperation with coalition forces. If Chen had been in Djibouti during this period, conducting administrative and analytical functions within secured compound, she could not have taken this photograph in Aden. She could not have recruited Hassan. She could not have been present at the location where Hassan died. Yet the photograph existed. Hassan was dead, and the burn scar on her forearm, documented by military physicians, matched the blast pattern from the VBIED attack that occurred in Aden on 14 February 2022. She opened her laptop and navigated to a password-protected folder, Deployment Evidence, 2022. Inside were 47 additional files, each one a fragment of an operation that, according to the U.S. government, had never happened. Chen understood classification. She held a top-secret sensitive compartmented information clearance, Granted in 2011 and continuously renewed through periodic reinvestigation. Her work with the 902nd Military Intelligence Group, subordinate to the United States Army Intelligence and Security Command, INSCOM, which itself reported to the Defense Intelligence Agency, required intimate familiarity with Executive Order 13526, the framework governing classified national security information. There were 3 classification levels: confidential, secret, and top secret. Within top secret existed compartments, special access programs, known colloquially as black programs, which restricted access even among cleared personnel. The Yemen operation had been ASAP. She knew this because her deployment orders, which she had reviewed in January 2022 before boarding the C-17 Globemaster III transport aircraft at Joint Base Andrews, had been marked with a code word she was prohibited from disclosing, even in unclassified contexts. But classification did not erase physical evidence. It controlled information about evidence. The distinction mattered. A classified operation could be acknowledged to exist while its details remained secret. For example, the raid that killed Osama bin Laden was publicly confirmed while specifics, assault team composition, Pakistani government notification timelines, intelligence sources, remained classified. Personnel who participated received deployment credit. Navy SEALs involved in Operation Neptune Spear had Southwest Asia documented on their service records, vague but verifiable. Chen's DD-214 did not merely omit details of a classified operation. It actively falsified her location, inserting a cover story that conflicted with documented medical evidence. This went beyond classification. This was something else. She opened a new document on her laptop and began typing, not for official filing, not yet, but to organize her thinking the way she had been trained, analytically, methodically, according to Intelligence Community Directive 203, which mandated that intelligence analysis be objective, independent of political consideration, and based on all available sources of information. Analytical assessment, anomalies in official service record, issue, DD Form 214, indicates deployment to Camp Lemonnier, Djibouti, 15 Jan 2022, 30 SEP 2022. Medical evidence, photographic documentation, and third-party verification indicate concurrent presence in Aden, Yemen. Evidence. Summary. 1. Medical records from Walter Reed, NMMC document blast injuries consistent with VBIED explosion, occurred 14 FEB 2022. Treating physician notes. Patient reports incident occurred in Aden, Yemen. Burn pattern analysis confirms flame exposure consistent with military-grade explosives. 1. Photograph, dated March 2022, GPS verified Aden, Yemen, shows subject with Hassan al-Rashid, confirmed deceased 18 June 2022 per state depth cable traffic. 2. Subject's personal journal, maintained daily per standard CI documentation protocols, contains 247 entries dated January-September 2022. Entries reference Aden geographic landmarks, meetings with Yemeni sources, Iranian IRGC activity, local tribal dynamics. No entries reference Djibouti or Camp Lemonnier. 3. Subject's government travel card, GTCC, shows transactions, Aden currency exchanges, February-May 2022, purchases at Al-Tawahi Market, fuel purchases for Toyota Hilux, plate number 43YM771, assigned to DIA cover unit. 4. Subject's personal GPS device, Garmin Fortrex 701, logged 847 waypoints in Yemen, 0 in Djibouti. Hypothesis, DD-214, Section 18, Remarks, was altered post-operation to insert false deployment location. Alternative hypothesis, Yemen operation was retroactively reclassified into compartment that prohibits acknowledgement of deployment location, even on personnel records. Key question, if security classification requires masking Yemen deployment, why fabricate Djibouti cover instead of generic Southwest Asia or classified location? Fabrication introduces verifiable falsehood that creates legal liability for VA claims, security clearance renewals, and employment verification. She stopped typing. Her heart rate had elevated to 88 BPM, not from anxiety but from the intellectual recognition of what this implied: intentional falsification of official military records. Under Title 18 U.S. Code prior of 1001, making false statements in official documents constituted a federal crime. If someone had altered her DD-214, they had committed a felony. But who would have the authority to alter a DD-214 after it had been finalized? And more critically, who would have the motivation to do so? Chen had spent 15 years identifying patterns. In counterintelligence work, patterns revealed adversary behavior, surveillance detection routes, dead drop servicing schedules, communication protocols. A single anomaly might be coincidence. Multiple anomalies indicated design. She opened her signal messaging app, end-to-end encrypted, preferred by the intelligence community for personal communications that shouldn't traverse government networks, and composed a message to Chief Warrant Officer 4 James Park, a fellow 35L who had deployed to Yemen during the same time frame. Park had worked a different sector, Taiz, not Aden, but the operations were part of the same compartmented program. Chen, Jim, quick question. Have you checked your DD-214 lately? Specifically Section 18. The message showed delivered, but not read. Park was likely at Fort Meade, where he worked as a CI analyst in the same building Chen had departed 3 months earlier. He would respond during his lunch break or after 1700 hours. She composed a second message, this one to Chief Warrant Officer 3 Maria Santos, who had been the senior human collector in Aden. Santos had recruited most of the local sources, including a Yemeni Coast Guard officer, who provided intelligence on Iranian weapons smuggling through Aden port. Chen, Maria, need you to verify something for me. Check your DD-214, Section 18, deployment dates John Sep 2022. Does it say Aden or Djibouti? Third message, to Captain Nicole Reeves, the intelligence officer who had coordinated their operations with Joint Special Operations Command elements, conducting direct action missions based on their intelligence. Reeves had been promoted to major since Yemen. She now worked at DIA headquarters in Washington. Chen, Nicole, this is going to sound odd, but I need you to pull your service record and check Section 18 remarks for your 2022 deployment. Where does it say you were? She sent all 3 messages and waited. While waiting, she retrieved another document from her folder, an award citation, unclassified, though the operation it referenced had been classified. It was her Joint Service Commendation Medal, presented in October 2022, 3 weeks after she had redeployed to Fort Meade. Joint Service Commendation Medal Citation. The President of the United States takes pleasure in presenting the Joint Service Commendation Medal to Chief Warrant Officer 3, Sarah M. Chen, United States Army, for exceptionally meritorious service from January 2022 to September 2022. CW3 Chen distinguished herself through outstanding professional competence, tactical expertise, and devotion to duty while deployed in support of Operation Inherent Resolve. Her counterintelligence acumen led to the identification of foreign threat networks, resulting in the disruption of weapons proliferation activities and the protection of coalition forces. CW3 Chen's exemplary performance reflects great credit upon herself, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the United States Army. Operation Inherent Resolve. The counter-ISIS campaign, primarily focused in Iraq and Syria, not Yemen. Chen felt the now familiar cognitive dissonance, the sensation of holding 2 incompatible facts in her mind simultaneously. Her award citation referenced Operation Inherent Resolve. Her DD-214 claimed Camp Lemonnier, Djibouti, supporting Operation Enduring Freedom, Horn of Africa. Her medical records documented injuries sustained in Aden, Yemen. Her photograph placed her in Aden. Hassan al-Rashid, whom she had recruited in Aden, was dead. All of these statements were verifiable. None of them were compatible with the official narrative embedded in her personnel file. Her phone buzzed. Signal message from CW4 Park. Park, funny you ask. Mine says Djibouti too. I flagged it with HRC, Human Resources Command, last month. They told me it was correct as written. I told them I was never in Djibouti. They told me to submit a DD Form 149, application for correction of military record. I did. Got denied 2 weeks ago. Reason: insufficient evidence to support claimed deployment location. Chen's pulse quickened. Park had been in Taiz, 250 kilometers north of Aden. Different city, same country. If his DD-214 also listed Djibouti, this wasn't an administrative error. This was systematic. Second message, from CW3 Santos. Santos: Sarah, what the hell is going on? I pulled my 214 yesterday because I'm applying for a GS-12 at FBI. And yeah, it says Djibouti. I was going to call HRC, but now I'm thinking I should call a lawyer. Are you saying yours says Djibouti too? Third message, from Major Reeves. Reeves, Chen, I need to call you. Don't discuss this on Signal. Meet me tomorrow, 1300, Silver Diner on Rockville Pike. Come alone. Chen read Reeves's message twice. The specificity, Silver Diner, not a diner or lunch, indicated operational security discipline. The instruction to come alone suggested Reeves believed surveillance was a possibility. The refusal to discuss it via Signal, despite Signal's encryption, implied Reeves suspected device compromise or subpoena risk. Chen had identified the pattern. At least 4 intelligence operators from the Yemen deployment had falsified DD-214s. The falsification was consistent. All listed Djibouti. Human Resources Command was denying correction requests. And Major Nicole Reeves, who now worked at DIA headquarters, 2 levels beneath Brigadier General Marcus Webb, was sufficiently concerned to require an in-person meeting with counter-surveillance precautions. This wasn't administrative error. This was institutional action. The Defense Intelligence Agency occupied a 1.9 million square foot facility on Joint Base Anacostia Bowling in Washington, D.C. Chen had worked there from 2018 to 2021 before the Yemen deployment. She knew the building's layout, the analyst floors, the SCIF spaces, the conference rooms where targeting decisions were made. She knew the organizational hierarchy. Analysts reported to branch chiefs to division chiefs to directors, directors to the deputy director to the director. Brigadier General Marcus Webb was the deputy director. 07 rank, 1 star, second highest position in the agency. He had held this position since June 2021, 6 months before Chen's deployment to Yemen. She had briefed him once in August 2021 on Iranian influence operations in the Arabian Peninsula. The briefing had not gone well. Chen had presented an analytical assessment based on signals intelligence, human intelligence, and geospatial intelligence that Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Quds Force was expanding operations in Yemen beyond their traditional Houthi proxies. Her assessment concluded that IRGC-QF was establishing a weapons pipeline through Aden Port, leveraging corrupt Yemeni officials and using front companies to ship advanced munitions, including man-portable air defense systems, manpads, and anti-tank guided missiles, ATGMs, to Houthi forces in the north and to Shia militia groups in Iraq. Webb had rejected the assessment. His words, documented in the briefing minutes, "This analysis is speculative and unsupported by authoritative collection. IRGC presence in Yemen is minimal and focused on advisory support to Houthis. There is no evidence of weapons proliferation through Aden. Assessment does not meet ICD 203 standards for analytic confidence." Chen had stood by her assessment. She had cited specific intelligence reports, NSA SIGINT intercepts of IRGC communications, CIA HUMINT reporting from Yemeni sources, NGA satellite imagery of Iranian-flagged vessels docking at Aden Port. Webb had dismissed it. He had told her to refine your tradecraft and avoid threat inflation. 3 months later, in November 2021, a U.S. military convoy in western Iraq was attacked with an ATGM. The weapon was identified as a Russian-made 9M133 Cornet, traced via serial number to an Iranian shipment that had transited through Aden Port in September 2021, exactly as Chen's assessment had predicted. 2 U.S. soldiers died. 4 were wounded. In December 2021, Webb had approved the Yemen deployment. Not to validate Chen's assessment, the official justification was force protection and counterintelligence support to coalition partners, but to contain the problem before it became a scandal. Because if Congress learned that DIA's deputy director had ignored intelligence warnings that led to American casualties, Webb's nomination to Lieutenant General, 08, would be dead on arrival. Chen had deployed in January 2022. She had done her job. She had recruited sources, collected intelligence, provided tactical targeting support. And on 14th of February 2022, the VBIED had detonated. The blast killed 11 Marines from a Marine Special Operations Team, MSOT, conducting a raid based on Chen's intelligence. It killed 12 Army personnel, including 2 from Chen's own unit. 23 Americans died because someone, she never learned who, had leaked the operation to Iranian intelligence. Chen survived because she had been 15 meters from the blast, not 5 meters like the Marines stacked at the door. She survived because her Cry Precision combat uniform included Kevlar panels that absorbed fragmentation. She survived because the blast wave threw her backward into a concrete wall, which fractured her skull but prevented her from being thrown into the burning wreckage. She did not survive unchanged. The diffuse axonal injury, the ruptured eardrum, the partial vision loss in her left eye, the tremors, these were permanent, but she was alive. 23 others were not, and 6 months later, Brigadier General Marcus Webb had offered her a job at DIA headquarters. GS-13 intelligence analyst, starting salary $86,000 per year, full benefits, promotion potential to GS-14 within 3 years, prestigious position, career security. All she had to do was accept medical discharge, sign the paperwork, and start work in January 2024. She had said yes. She had not understood at the time that the job offer was a transaction. Silence for employment. Now, looking at her falsified DD-214, she understood. Webb had buried the Yemen operation. He had reclassified it into a compartment so restrictive that even the personnel who served there could not prove they had been there. He had done this not to protect national security, but to protect his own career. Because if anyone investigated the February 2022 attack, they would trace it back to his November 2021 decision to ignore Chen's intelligence assessment. They would discover that he had been wrong, that his wrongness had killed 23 Americans, and that he had deployed a team to Yemen specifically to fix the problem before it reached congressional oversight. Webb had not falsified Chen's DD-214 to punish her. He had done it to erase the operation itself. If the operation never happened, no one died. If no one died, there was no investigation. If there was no investigation, Webb's promotion to 08 remained on track. But the families of the 23 dead soldiers existed. They had death certificates. They had burial flags. They had condolence letters from the president. And now, apparently, they could not access their benefits, because the official record claimed their loved ones had died in training accidents or non-combat incidents, not in combat operations that had been erased from history. Chen spent the next 2 hours researching. She did not use her government laptop. She used her personal device, connected via VPN through a commercial service provider, accessing only unclassified, publicly available information. She started with Defense Casualty Analysis System, DCAS records, the official database of U.S. military deaths. DCAS was searchable by date, location, and circumstance. She queried February 2022 and filtered for casualties in Southwest Asia, the broadest geographic category. 23 results appeared, all listed as killed in action, but the location field varied. 11 listed Iraq, 8 listed Syria, 4 listed training accident undisclosed location, none listed Yemen. Chen cross-referenced the names with her personal records. She recognized all 23. They had been at the target compound in Aden on 14th of February 2022. She had provided the intelligence that put them there. She opened a second tab and navigated to the Gold Star Mothers National Organization website, a support network for families of fallen service members. She searched for recent posts mentioning benefits issues. Third result, a forum post dated 3 weeks earlier. Topic: Death gratuity denied. Help needed. Posted by Rodriguez, Amanda. My husband, Staff Sergeant Carlos Rodriguez, was killed in February 2022. I received notification from his command that he died in service of his country and was buried with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery. 6 months later, I applied for the $100,000 death gratuity and dependency and indemnity compensation, DIC, from the VA. Both were denied. The reason: death did not occur in combat zone or due to combat-related injuries. Service members DD-214 indicates administrative duties in Djibouti. Insufficient evidence of hostile action. I have my husband's Purple Heart. I have the condolence letter from the president. I have the flag from his coffin. But the VA says he wasn't in combat. His death certificate says multiple traumatic injuries due to explosion, but the VA says it wasn't combat-related. I have 2 children, ages 4 and 6. I'm a teacher. I make $48,000 per year. We relied on Carlos's BAH, Basic Allowance for Housing, and BAS, Basic Allowance for Subsistence. I can't afford our mortgage without the death benefits. The VA tells me to file an appeal, but I don't know what evidence to provide because the military won't tell me where Carlos really was or what he was doing. Has anyone else dealt with this? Please help. 17 replies followed. Chen scanned them quickly. 4 were from other Gold Star family members reporting identical situations. Combat deaths that the VA claimed were not combat-related. Death gratuity denied. Appeals pending for 12-18 months. Chen opened her Signal app again and messaged Major Reeves. Chen. Nicole, I'm seeing at least 23 families affected. Death benefits denied because deployment location was falsified on DD-214. This is bigger than just us. We need to talk tomorrow. Reeves responded immediately. Reeves. I know. That's why we need to meet in person. Don't contact anyone else. Don't post anything online. Don't file any FOIA requests. Webb is watching for flags. If he knows you're investigating, he will bury you. Chen stared at the message. Webb is watching for flags. If he knows you're investigating, he will bury you. Reeves was not exaggerating. At DIA's level, bury you meant security clearance suspension, investigation for unauthorized disclosure, possible prosecution under the Espionage Act. It meant unemployment, legal fees, and a federal record that would make her unemployable in any government or defense contractor position. It meant the destruction of the career she had built over 15 years. But 23 families had lost their spouses, their parents, their children, and those families could not access benefits because Brigadier General Marcus Webb had decided his promotion was more important than their grief. Chen made a decision. She would meet Reeves tomorrow. She would hear what Reeves knew, and then she would decide whether to file the formal complaint that would trigger an Inspector General investigation, end Webb's career, and likely end her own. But first, she needed to understand exactly how deep this went. At 2000 hours, Chen received a phone call from a number she did not recognize. 202-555-0174, Washington, D.C. area code. She let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, the voicemail notification appeared. She listened. Chief Chen, this is Colonel Rita Hayes, 902nd Military Intelligence Group. I need to speak with you urgently regarding your separation processing and your upcoming employment at DIA. Please call me back at this number. It's important that we speak tonight. Colonel Rita Hayes, Chen's former commander. The woman who had recommended Chen for the Yemen deployment, who had written her performance evaluations, who had mentored her through 12 years of increasingly complex counterintelligence operations. Chen called back. Hayes answered on the first ring. Sarah, thank you for calling. I'll get straight to the point. I received a query today from the VA regarding your disability claim. They asked me to verify your deployment history for 2022. I need to confirm, you were in Djibouti from January to September 2022, is that correct? Chen's pulse quickened. This was a test. Hayes knew where Chen had been. Hayes had signed Chen's deployment orders. Hayes had visited the team in Yemen in March 2022. Hayes knew the official record was false. Ma'am, Chen said carefully, my DD-214 indicates I was in Djibouti during that time frame. That's not what I asked, Sarah. I asked where you were. With respect, Colonel, I think you know where I was. Silence. 3 seconds. 5 seconds. Hayes was choosing her words carefully, the way intelligence officers do when they know the conversation might be recorded. Sarah, the DD-214 is the official record. For purposes of benefits, employment verification, and security clearance adjudication, the DD-214 is the authoritative document. If you claim to have been in a different location, you will need to provide evidence. Do you have evidence? I have photographs, medical records, GPS data, personal journals, award citations. None of that is official. None of that supersedes the DD-214. If you contest the DD-214, you will trigger a review. That review will examine whether you misrepresented your activities during the deployment. It could result in adverse action against your security clearance. It could affect your employment offer at DIA. I'm advising you as your former commander and as someone who cares about your career to accept the DD-214 as written and move forward. Chen's hands were shaking now. Not TBI tremor. Adrenaline. Colonel, I was in Aden, Yemen. I was wounded in a VBIED attack that killed 23 Americans. My medical records document those injuries. The families of those 23 Americans can't access their death benefits because the official record claims the deaths weren't combat-related. If I accept the DD-214 as written, I'm complicit in that. Hayes's voice hardened. Sarah, you are making this more complicated than it needs to be. The deployment was reclassified. The details are compartmented. You don't have a need to know why. You are being given an opportunity. A high-level position at DIA, full benefits, career security. In exchange, you accept the official record and do not discuss the deployment with anyone outside the compartment. This is how the system works. This is how classified operations are protected. This isn't about classification, ma'am. This is about falsification. My DD-214 doesn't say classified location. It says Djibouti. That's a lie. And that lie is preventing 23 families from receiving death benefits they're legally entitled to. Hayes exhaled slowly. Sarah, I'm going to say this once. Brigadier General Webb is aware of your concerns. He has authorized me to offer you the following. If you accept the DD-214 as written and do not pursue correction or file any formal complaints, your GS-13 offer stands. If you contest the DD-214, the offer will be withdrawn. You will be flagged for security review. Your clearance will be suspended pending investigation. You will not work in intelligence again. Choose carefully. The line went dead. Chen sat in her apartment, the phone still pressed to her ear, and felt the full weight of the institutional machine arrayed against her. This was not bureaucratic error. This was not classification protocol. This was a coordinated effort, directed from the top, to erase an operation that had gone catastrophically wrong and to silence anyone who tried to expose the truth. Loop 1 opens. Why would the United States government falsify the service records of dozens of intelligence operators, claim they were in Djibouti when they were in Yemen, and deny death benefits to the families of 23 Americans who died in combat, unless someone with enough authority to rewrite history needed to cover up a decision that had gotten those Americans killed? Chen looked at her DD-214 again, at the lies typed in official font on official paper with official seals. She looked at the photograph of Hassan al-Rashid, the Yemeni physician who had trusted her and who had died for that trust. She looked at the scar on her forearm, the permanent reminder that she had been somewhere the government now claimed did not exist, and she made a decision. She opened her laptop and began drafting a formal complaint to the Defense Department Inspector General, knowing that once she submitted it, there would be no going back, no career at DIA, no GS-13 salary, no security. Only the truth and whatever price came with it. Chen did not submit the complaint that night. She needed more evidence. More critically, she needed to understand the scope of the operation, how many people knew, how high the authorization went, and whether Major Nicole Reeves could provide the internal DIA documentation that would make the complaint impossible to dismiss. She spent the next hour conducting reconnaissance, the digital equivalent of the counterintelligence surveillance detection routes she had run in Yemen. She created a new Proton Mail account, disposable, anonymous, no connection to her official identity. She accessed the Defense Department's Freedom of Information Act, FOIA portal, and drafted a request, deliberately vague to avoid triggering internal flags. Request all documents related to U.S. military operations in Yemen from January 2022 to September 2022, including but not limited to deployment orders, personnel rosters, casualty reports, and intelligence assessments related to Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps activity in Aden, Yemen. She did not submit it. Not yet. FOIA requests left a trail, and as Reeves had warned, Webb was watching for flags. Instead, she saved it as a draft and moved to the next step, identifying other personnel who might be willing to cooperate. She pulled up the roster from the Yemen operation, which she had saved in encrypted format on a personal external hard drive. The roster listed 47 personnel, 12 intelligence analysts, 8 human collectors, 6 SIGINT operators, 4 targeting officers, 3 liaison coordinators, 2 medical personnel, and 12 security contractors. Of these, 23 were dead. Of the surviving 24, she had already contacted Park, Santos, and Reeves. She composed a message to another survivor, Sergeant First Class David Torres, a 35M human collector who had worked the same tribal networks Chen had. Torres was now stationed at Fort Bragg, assigned to an 18th Airborne Corps unit. She messaged him via signal. Chen. Dave, it's Sarah Chen. Quick question. Have you looked at your DD-214 lately? Does yours say Djibouti? Torres responded within 5 minutes. Torres. Yeah. I noticed that last year when I applied for VA healthcare. Tried to get it corrected. HRC told me to kick rocks. Why? Chen. Because at least 5 of us have the same problem. And 23 families of KIA personnel can't get death benefits because the official record says their loved ones weren't in combat. I'm building a case. Are you willing to provide a sworn statement? Long pause. 2 minutes. 3 minutes. Finally, Torres. Sarah, I have 16 years in. I'm up for E8 next year. If I make waves, they'll bury me. I've got a wife and 3 kids. I can't risk my retirement. I'm sorry. Chen understood. Torres was 4 years from retirement with full benefits. The Army retirement system was based on 20 years of service and final pay grade. If Torres jeopardized his career now, he would lose $1.5 million in lifetime retirement benefits. She could not ask him to sacrifice that for a principal. She moved to the next name, Captain Sarah Mitchell, an intelligence officer who had served as the targeting cell chief. Mitchell had left active duty in 2023 and was now working as a defense contractor at Booz Allen Hamilton, pulling in a 6-figure salary with a top-secret SCI clearance. Chen sent a message. Chen. Sarah, I need your help. The Yemen deployment has been buried. Our DD-214s are falsified. 23 families can't get benefits. I'm filing an IG complaint. Can I count on you to provide a statement? Mitchell's response was immediate. Mitchell. Chen, I sympathize, but I signed an NDA with my company. If I disclose anything about classified operations, I'll be terminated and possibly prosecuted. I've got student loans, a mortgage, and a career I can't afford to lose. I'm sorry. Chen tried 3 more names. 2 did not respond. 1 responded with a variation of Torres's message. I can't risk my career. I'm sorry. She was running out of allies. The institutional pressure to remain silent was overwhelming, enforced not by direct threats, but by the simple calculus of self-interest. Everyone who had served in Yemen had something to lose. Retirement benefits, security clearances, employment, legal immunity. Webb had structured the silence perfectly, not through coercion, but through the natural incentive structure of the military-industrial ecosystem. At 2200 hours, she received another signal message, this time from CW3 Maria Santos. Santos. Sarah, I just got a call from my branch manager at HRC. He said there's a flag on my personnel file related to my DD-214. He said if I file any formal complaints or provide statements to investigators, my security clearance will be reviewed for reliability concerns. This is retaliation, Sarah. They're threatening me. Chen's jaw tightened. The machine was adapting. Webb's apparatus, whatever it was, had detected the network of communication among Yemen personnel and was preemptively pressuring potential witnesses. This was not paranoia. This was operational security from the other side, counterintelligence targeted at the people who had conducted counterintelligence. She typed a response. Chen. Maria. I understand. Don't put yourself at risk. I'll find another way. But she was running out of ways. Without corroborating witnesses, her IG complaint would be her word against the institutional record. She needed someone on the inside, someone with access to DIA's internal communications, someone who could document the orders that had buried the operation. She needed Major Nicole Reeves. The next day, Chen drove to Rockville, Maryland. She arrived at the Silver Diner at 12:45 hours, 15 minutes early, and conducted surveillance detection. She parked 2 blocks away, walked a circuitous route, doubled back once, and entered the restaurant through the side entrance. Standard counter-surveillance protocol, the kind she had used when meeting confidential sources in denied areas. Major Nicole Reeves was already seated in a rear booth, her back to the wall, positioned to observe the entrance. She wore civilian clothes, jeans, a Georgetown University sweatshirt, sunglasses. When Chen slid into the booth across from her, Reeves removed the sunglasses and looked at her with the expression of someone delivering bad news. Sarah, before you say anything, you need to know, I'm not going to testify. I'm not going to provide a statement. I'm not going to help you. Chen blinked. Then why did you ask me to meet? Because you deserve to know why. Reeves pulled a manila folder from her bag and slid it across the table. Inside were printouts, email chains, memoranda, classified cable traffic, redacted, but enough context visible to understand the content. I copied these before my access was downgraded last month, Reeves said. I'm showing them to you, but I can't give them to you. If you photograph them, I'll deny it. If you cite them in a complaint, I'll say you fabricated them. Understand? Chen nodded. She opened the folder and began reading. The first document was an email dated 18th of November 2021. Sent from Brigadier General Marcus Webb to the Director of DIA, Lieutenant General Scott Morrison. Subject: Response to IRGC Threat Assessment. Sir, I have reviewed CW3 Chen's assessment regarding IRGC weapons proliferation through Aden, Yemen. While I appreciate her analytical effort, I assess her conclusions are not supported by authoritative intelligence. IRGC presence in Yemen remains minimal and advisory in nature. There is no credible evidence of advanced weapons transfers through Aden port. I recommend we do not forward this assessment to CENTCOM or SOCOM. Doing so would create unnecessary alarm and could prompt premature military action that would jeopardize ongoing diplomatic efforts with regional partners. Recommend no action. Respectfully, B.G. Marcus Webb. The second document was dated 22nd November 2021. A response from LTG Morrison. Marcus, concur with your assessment. We need to avoid threat inflation that could derail negotiations with Saudi and Emirati partners. Hold the assessment at our level. Scott, the third document was dated 5th December 2021, 1 week after the ATGM attack in Iraq. This was a classified message from CENTCOM to DIA. Classification: Top Secret, Psi, REL USA. Subject: Request for intelligence support. IRGC activity in Yemen. Recent ATGM attack in western Iraq has been traced to weapons shipment originating from Aden, Yemen. Request DIA provide intelligence support for targeting IRGC logistics networks in southern Yemen. Request deployment of CI human collection team to Aden to develop sources and provide tactical intelligence. Request immediate response. The fourth document was Webb's reply, dated 6th December 2021. Classification: Top Secret, Psi, REL USA. Subject: RE. Request for intelligence support. IRGC activity in Yemen. DIA will deploy CI human collection team to Aden, Yemen in January 2022. Mission: develop local sources, collect intelligence on IRGC logistics networks, provide tactical targeting support to JSOC elements. Team will consist of 12 personnel from 902nd MI Group. Mission will be conducted under Special Access Program Compartment. Deployment will be masked as administrative TDY to Camp Lemonnier, Djibouti, for personnel security purposes. B.G. Marcus Webb Chen read the final sentence twice. Deployment will be masked as administrative TDY to Camp Lemonnier, Djibouti, for personnel security purposes. Webb had planned the cover story from the beginning, not to protect operational security during the mission, but to protect himself after the mission failed. He knew, Chen said quietly. He knew his assessment was wrong. He knew the attack in Iraq proved me right, and he deployed us to Yemen to fix it before anyone could connect his failure to the casualties. Yes, Reeves said. And when the VBIED killed 23 of our people, he compartmentalized the entire operation so no one could investigate how it happened. Chen looked up. You're at DIA headquarters. You work 2 levels beneath him. You must have seen more than this. Reeves nodded. I have. I've seen the casualty reports. I've seen the emails from the Gold Star families asking why their benefits are being denied. I've seen Webb personally intervene to block FOIA requests. I've seen him pressure HRC to deny DD-214 correction requests. And last month, I was reassigned from my position in the Counterintelligence and Security Division to a generic analyst role. My clearance was downgraded. My access to personnel files was revoked. This is what happens to people who know too much. Why won't you testify? Reeves's expression hardened. Because I'm 6 months from retirement, Sarah. I've got 19.5 years in. If I testify, Webb will accuse me of unauthorized disclosure. He'll pull my clearance. He'll initiate an investigation. And even if I'm eventually cleared, I'll lose my retirement. I'll lose my pension. I'll lose everything I've worked for. I have 2 kids in college. I can't afford to be the martyr. Chen felt a wave of exhaustion. Not physical. Her TBI symptoms were manageable today, but existential. She was fighting an institution that had infinite resources, infinite patience, and infinite capacity to punish dissent, and she was doing it alone. So what am I supposed to do? Chen asked. Let Webb get away with it. Let 23 families go bankrupt because he's covering his ass. Reeves leaned forward. Sarah, listen to me. You can file the IG complaint. You can blow the whistle. You can sacrifice your career, your security clearance, your future employment, and maybe, you'll expose Webb. Maybe he'll get a letter of reprimand. Maybe he won't get his promotion to 08. But the families? they still won't get their benefits. Because the operation is still compartmented, the casualty reports are still classified, and the classification system protects itself. Even if Webb goes down, the system survives. So I do nothing? No. You survive. You take the GS-13 job. You keep your clearance. You work from inside the system. And when the time is right, when Webb retires, when the operation is declassified, when you have allies in place, you push for change. But you don't throw yourself on a sword that won't cut the dragon. Chen looked at the documents spread across the table. Proof of Webb's negligence. Proof of the cover-up. Proof that 23 Americans had died because one general prioritized his career over their lives. And proof that the system protected him, not them. She thought about the families. Amanda Rodriguez, trying to pay her mortgage on a teacher's salary. 22 others like her, trapped in bureaucratic hell. She thought about Hassan al-Rashid, the Yemeni physician who had trusted her and who had died for that trust. She thought about the 23 soldiers whose names were carved into Arlington headstones but whose service had been erased from official history. And she thought about Staff Sergeant Carlos Rodriguez's 4-year-old daughter, who would grow up never knowing where her father had really been or what he had really done. Loop 1. Solidifies. Chief Warrant Officer Sarah Chen has documented evidence that Brigadier General Marcus Webb falsified service records to cover up his catastrophic intelligence failure. She knows 23 families are suffering because of this cover-up, but every potential witness is too afraid to testify. Every institution that could hold Webb accountable is protecting him instead, and the one person with inside access, Major Reeves, has chosen survival over justice. The question is no longer, can Chen prove what happened? But, will she sacrifice everything she has worked for to expose a truth that the system is designed to bury? Chen closed the folder and slid it back to Reeves. "I'm filing the complaint," she said. Reeves's eyes widened. "Sarah, I'm filing it. I'm citing the evidence. I'm naming Webb, and I'm prepared for the consequences. They will destroy you." "I know." Reeves stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, then you need to do it right. You need to go public simultaneously. If you only file with the IG, Webb will classify the investigation and bury it. But if you also go to Congress, to the media, to the Government Accountability Office, if you make it too big to contain, then maybe, you have a chance." Chen pulled out her phone and opened her notes app. "Tell me how." And for the next hour, in a booth at the Silver Diner in Rockville, Maryland, Major Nicole Reeves, the woman who had chosen survival over justice, taught Chief Warrant Officer Sarah Chen how to take down a general. Chen returned to her apartment with Major Reeves's tactical advice crystallized into a 3-phase operational plan. Phase 1. Document the institutional conspiracy. Phase 2. Establish a network of corroborating evidence beyond her personal testimony. Phase 3. Execute a coordinated disclosure to multiple oversight bodies simultaneously. Inspector General, Senate Armed Services Committee, Government Accountability Office, and the Washington Post. But before she could dismantle the system, she needed to understand its full scope. How many families were affected? How systematic was the denial of benefits? And most critically, could she prove that the denials were not bureaucratic error, but deliberate policy? She opened her laptop and navigated to the Defense Casualty Analysis System, DCAS, the unclassified public database of U.S. military fatalities. The system allowed searches by date, location, and circumstance. She had already identified the 23 casualties from the 14 February 2022 VBIED attack in Aden. Now she needed to cross-reference those names with Gold Star family benefit claims. The Department of Veterans Affairs did not publish data on denied death benefits. Privacy regulations prohibited disclosure of individual claim decisions. But the Gold Star Mothers National Organization maintained a private forum where families discussed benefits issues. Chen had created an account the previous night using a pseudonym, Sarah, 2008, her first name and year of enlistment. She navigated to the forum's benefits and claims section and searched for posts mentioning death gratuity denied, or DIC denied, dependency and indemnity compensation, the VA's monthly payment to surviving spouses and children of service members who died in combat. 47 results appeared. Chen filtered by date. Posts from March 2022 to present. This narrowed the results to 31 posts. She began reading systematically, looking for patterns. The first post was from Amanda Rodriguez, whose message Chen had seen yesterday. The second was from Jennifer Hawkins, widow of Sergeant First Class Michael Hawkins, 75th Ranger Regiment. Chen recognized the name immediately. SFC Hawkins had been part of the JSOC security element providing close protection for Chen's intelligence team in Aden. He had died in the VBIED blast, positioned at the vehicle checkpoint 10 meters from the explosion. Posted by J. Hawkins 2022. My husband died on Valentine's Day 2022. The Army told me he died in service to his country during a classified operation. They presented me with a Purple Heart, a Bronze Star, and a flag from Arlington. But when I applied for death benefits, the VA said his death was non-combat related because his DD-214 shows he was at Camp Lemonnier, Djibouti, doing administrative work. The Army's casualty report says, killed in action. The VA's decision letter says not combat related. These are contradictions I cannot reconcile. I have 2 sons, ages 7 and 9. My husband's military life insurance, $400,000 SGLI, paid out, but the $100,000 death gratuity was denied. Monthly DIC payments, $1,612, were denied. Education benefits for my sons were approved, but survivor benefit plan was reduced because the VA classified his death as line of duty, not combat. I am losing our house. I teach elementary school and make $52,000 per year. I cannot afford the mortgage without Michael's income. I have contacted my congressman, my senator, and the VA regional office. Everyone tells me to file an appeal. I've filed 3 appeals, all denied. The reason is always the same. Service members' personnel file does not document combat deployment. Chen's jaw tightened. She cross-referenced the name, SFC Michael Hawkins, 75th Ranger Regiment, killed 14th of February 2022. Aden, Yemen. She had been 20 meters from him when the VBIED detonated. She had seen his body, what remained of it, loaded onto the medevac helicopter. She had attended his memorial service at Fort Benning 3 weeks later, and now his widow was losing her house because Brigadier General Marcus Webb had decided that erasing the operation was more important than honoring the dead. She continued reading. The third post was from David Chen, no relation, father of 2nd Lieutenant Jessica Chen, Army Military Intelligence, killed in the same attack. The fourth was from Maria Santos's sister-in-law, posting on behalf of a widow who was too devastated to write. The 5th, 6th, 7th, all families of personnel who had died in Aden, but whose official records claimed they had been in Djibouti. Chen opened a spreadsheet and began compiling data. Name, rank, unit, KIA date, DD-214 location, benefits denied, financial impact, Chuchiu Chinu, SSG Carlos Rodriguez, E6, Army MI, 14 Feb. 2022, Djibouti, death gratuity, DIC, foreclosure pending, SFC Michael Hawkins, E7, 75th Rangers, 14 Feb. 2022, Djibouti, death gratuity, DIC, home lost, filing bankruptcy, 2LT Jessica Chen, 01, Army. Migraines 14 Feb. 2022, Djibouti, death gratuity, DIC, family supporting widow financially. She continued through all 23 names. 19 families had filed benefits claims. 18 had been denied. 1, the family of a Marine Staff Sergeant, had been approved, but only because the Marine Corps had issued a corrected DD-214 listing, Southwest Asia, classified location, instead of Djibouti. When the other families cited this as precedent, the VA had responded that each case is evaluated individually based on available documentation. Chen calculated the financial impact, $100,000 death gratuity per family, x 18 denied claims, Birkin $1,800,000. Monthly DIC payments of approximately $1,600 18 families, x 24 months since February 2022, $691,200. Total, $2,491,200 in benefits that should have been paid to Gold Star families but were being withheld because one general needed to protect his career. But the financial calculation understated the human cost. Jennifer Hawkins was losing her house. Amanda Rodriguez was working 2 jobs to support her children. David Chen had taken out a second mortgage to support his daughter-in-law and 2 grandchildren. These were not abstract statistics. These were families destroyed by institutional betrayal. Chen composed a message on the Gold Star Forum, posted by Sarah M. 2008. To everyone in this thread, I am a former Army intelligence officer. I was deployed to the same operation where your loved ones were killed. My DD-214 also lists Djibouti, even though I was in Yemen. I have documented evidence that our records were falsified to conceal a senior officer's negligence. I am filing a formal complaint with the Department of Defense Inspector General. If you are willing to provide sworn statements documenting the denial of your benefits, I can include them as evidence of institutional harm. Please contact me via private message if you want to participate. I understand the risk, but your families deserve justice. She posted the message at 0922 hours on Wednesday, 14th November 2024. Within 4 hours, she received 14 private messages from Gold Star family members. Will the U.S. government face accountability for denying $2.5 million in death benefits to 18 Gold Star families whose loved ones died in a combat operation that was erased from official records to protect the general's career? Chen spent the afternoon drafting the formal Freedom of Information Act, FOIA request. FOIA, codified at 5 U.S.C. Paragraph 552, required federal agencies to disclose records upon request, unless those records fell under one of 9 exemptions, including classified national security information, Exemption 1, and personnel files that would constitute an invasion of privacy, Exemption 6. Webb would almost certainly invoke Exemption 1 to block disclosure. But Chen's strategy was not to obtain the documents, she knew they would be denied, but to establish a paper trail demonstrating that the government was actively concealing information about the Yemen operation. When she eventually went public, she could cite the FOIA denial as evidence of cover-up. She drafted the request carefully, using language that was broad enough to capture the relevant documents, but specific enough to avoid rejection for being overly burdensome. Freedom of Information Act Request 2, Department of Defense, Defense Intelligence Agency FOIA Requester, Sarah M. Chen, former CW3, U.S. Army date, 14th November 2024. Request, pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act, 5 U.S.C., paragraph 552, I request access to the following records. 1. All deployment orders, personnel rosters, and unit movement records related to U.S. military operations in Yemen from 1 January 2022 to 30 September 2022. 2. All intelligence assessments, briefing materials, and analytical products related to Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC activity in Aden, Yemen, from 1 June 2021 to 31 December 2022. 3. All casualty reports, after-action reviews, and investigative materials related to the incident on or about 14 February 2022 that resulted in 23 U.S. military fatalities. 4. All correspondence, memoranda, and communications between Brigadier General Marcus Webb, or his staff, and any other Department of Defense personnel regarding the classification, reclassification, or compartmentalization of operations in Yemen from 1 December 2021 to 34 December 2023. 5. All records related to the denial of death benefits, death gratuity and dependency and indemnity compensation to families of U.S. service members killed on or about 14th of February 2022. Justification. This request is submitted in the public interest. There is substantial public interest in understanding whether U.S. military operations were conducted in Yemen during the specified time frame, whether those operations were properly documented in service members' personnel files, and whether families of deceased service members have been denied benefits due to inaccuracies in official records. I am a former U.S. Army Chief Warrant Officer who served during the time frame in question. I have reason to believe my own service records contain inaccuracies that have resulted in the denial of VA benefits. I am seeking these records to support my claim for correction of military records under 10 U.S.C. Paragraph 1552. I request a fee waiver pursuant to 5 U.S.C. Paragraph 552A, Pasti 4, A, E, as disclosure of this information is in the public interest and is not primarily in my commercial interest. I request that records be provided in electronic format. If any portion of this request is denied, I request a written explanation citing the specific FOIA exemption as being invoked. Respectfully submitted, Sarah M. Chen. She submitted the request electronically through the DIA FOIA portal at 14:45 hours. The automated response indicated that the request had been assigned tracking number DIA 2024-00847 and that the agency had 20 business days to respond, extendable to 30 days under unusual circumstances. Chen knew from experience that DIA would invoke unusual circumstances, then request a 90-day extension, then classify the entire request under Exemption 1. The process would take 6 months minimum, but that was acceptable. She was not waiting for the FOIA response. She was building the legal foundation for the eventual lawsuit, Chen v. Department of Defense. While waiting, she needed to continue gathering evidence from other sources. Chen had learned, during her 15 years in intelligence, that institutional cover-ups often left digital traces. Humans made mistakes. Metadata, the hidden data embedded in electronic documents, frequently revealed information that authors intended to conceal. She opened the PDF of her DD Form 214, which she had downloaded from the Army's Human Resources Command website 3 months earlier. The document appeared authentic. Official seals, signatures, classification markings. But Chen knew that PDF files contained embedded metadata, creation date, modification date, author information, software used to generate the file. She opened the file in Adobe Acrobat Pro, navigated to File, Properties, Description, and examined the metadata fields. Title, DD24T, Chen Sarah, M20209300 PDF. Author, DHRA Admin, Web. Subject, Certificate of Release or Discharge from Active Duty. Keywords, blank, created, 2022-09-30, 14-22-03, GMT modified, 2023-03-15-09-47-22, GMT application, Adobe Acrobat Pro DC, 2023 Pro 1.2009-3 PDF. Producer, Adobe PDF Library, 16.013. Chen's pulse quickened. The author field listed DHRA
Admin
was
Web.
the Defense Human Resources Activity, the agency responsible for maintaining military personnel records. But the specific user account, DHRA Admin Web, indicated that someone with web in their username had created the PDF. More critically, the modified field showed that the document had been altered on 15th of March 2023, 6 months after Chen's separation date of 30th September 2022. DD-214s were supposed to be finalized at separation and never modified afterward except through the formal DD Form 149 correction process, which required documentation and approval. Chen had never filed a DD Form 149, yet her DD-214 had been modified 6 months after she left active duty. She cross-referenced the modification date with other events. 15th of March 2023. That was 2 weeks after Brigadier General Marcus Webb had been nominated for promotion to Lieutenant General, 08. The nomination had been announced on 1st March 2023 in a Department of Defense press release. The timeline was damning. Webb had been nominated for 08, and 2 weeks later, Chen's DD-214 had been retroactively altered by an account bearing his name. Chen opened her personal journal from March 2023. She had noted that on 13th of March 2023, 2 days before the DD-214 modification, she had applied for the GS-13 position at DIA. The job application required submission of her DD-214 as proof of military service. She had submitted it on 13th of March. On 15th of March, it had been modified. On 17th of March, she had received an email from Colonel Rita Hayes offering her the GS-13 position. The sequence was clear. Chen had applied for the DIA job, triggering a background review. Someone, likely Webb or his staff, had realized that Chen's DD-214 still contained evidence of the Yemen deployment. They had modified it, inserting the Djibouti cover story, and then offered her the job contingent on accepting the falsified record. Chen took screenshots of the metadata and saved them to her encrypted external drive. This was documentary evidence of post hoc alteration, combined with her other evidence, photographs, GPS data, medical records. It created a pattern that would be difficult to dismiss as administrative error. She now had proof that her DD-214 had been deliberately modified after her separation, using an account associated with the general who had authorized the Yemen operation. This was not classification. This was falsification. Small victory number 1 achieved. Chen has established that her DD-214 was retroactively altered by Webb's administrative account, providing documentary proof of deliberate falsification rather than mere classification. Chen knew she could not fight Webb alone. Major Reeves had been correct. Without corroborating witnesses, Chen's complaint would be dismissed as the grievance of a disgruntled former employee. She needed a network, not just of Yemen veterans willing to speak, but of institutional insiders who could document the conspiracy from within. She composed a secure message to Sergeant First Class David Torres, the human collector who had initially declined to provide a statement. But this time, Chen changed her approach. Instead of asking Torres to risk his career, she asked for something smaller: information. Chen, via signal: Dave, I'm not asking you to testify, but I need to know. Did anyone from DIA or HRC contact you in March 2023 asking about your DD-214? Torres responded within an hour. Torres: Yeah, I got a call from some civilian at DIA. Said they were conducting a routine audit of personnel records for people who had deployed under special access programs. Asked if I had noticed any discrepancies in my DD-214. I said yes, it lists Djibouti when I was in Yemen. He said that was correct as filed, and that I should not discuss deployment details with anyone, including VA claims processors. Then 2 weeks later, my DD-214 was updated on the HRC portal. When I downloaded the new version, it had a different modification date. Same content, but the metadata showed it had been regenerated. Chen's hands moved to her keyboard. Chen: Do you still have the old version? The one before March 2023? Torres: Yeah, I keep backups of everything. Military habit. Chen: Can you send me both versions? I need to compare the metadata. 5 minutes later, Torres sent 2 PDF files via encrypted file transfer. Chen downloaded them and opened both in Adobe Acrobat Pro. File 1, original. Created 2022-08-15, 11:33:12 GMT. Modified 2022-08-15, 11:33:12 GMT. Author DHRA System Auto File 2. Revised. Created 2022-08-15, 11:33:12 GMT. Backdated to match original. Modified 2023-03-14, 16:08:44 GMT. Author DHRA Admin Web. The pattern was identical to Chen's DD-214. Torres's record had been modified on 14th of March 2023, 1 day before Chen's, by the same DHRA admin Webby account. But the created date had been backdated to August 2022 to make it appear the document had never been altered. This was sophisticated document manipulation, the kind that required administrative access to the Defense Human Resources Activity Database. Only senior officials with security clearances and database permissions could execute this type of alteration. Chen added Torres's evidence to her case file. She now had 2 DD-214s showing the same pattern. Retroactive modification in March 2023 by the DHRA admin Web account, coinciding with Webb's 08 nomination. She messaged CW3 Maria Santos: Chen: Maria, I need you to check the metadata on your DD-214 file. Properties. Description. Look at the modified date and author field. Let me know what you find. Santos responded 30 minutes later. Santos: Modified 16 March 2023. Author DHRA admin Web. What the hell, Sarah? I separated in October 2022. Why was my record modified 5 months later? Chen: Because Webb was nominated for 08 on 1st March 2023, and someone in his office realized that our service records would be reviewed as part of the Senate confirmation process. If senators saw that dozens of intelligence personnel had deployed to Yemen, a country where we're not supposed to have troops, they would ask questions. So Webb's team systematically scrubbed all the records in mid-March. Your record, my record, Torres's record, probably all 47 personnel from the Yemen operation. Santos: This is evidence of conspiracy, Sarah. This isn't just classification. This is coordinated falsification of federal records. We need to go to the FBI. Chen: Not yet. FBI defers to DoD on military personnel matters. We need to take this to DoD IG first, establish the institutional failure, and then escalate to FBI if DoD doesn't act. But I need more evidence. Can you ask around quietly? Anyone from our unit who might have noticed their DD-214 was modified in March 2023? Santos: I'll reach out to a few people I trust. But Sarah, be careful. If Webb figured out we're comparing notes, he'll move to discredit us before we can file the complaint. Chen understood the risk, but she also understood that Webb's window of vulnerability was closing. His 08 nomination hearing was scheduled for January 2025, 2 months away. If he was confirmed before Chen filed her complaint, he would have even more institutional power to bury the investigation. She had to move quickly. Chen needed to prove not only that service records had been falsified, but that operational intelligence had been systematically destroyed. If she could demonstrate that Webb had ordered the deletion of intelligence data that contradicted the official narrative, it would establish a pattern of obstruction that extended beyond mere classification. She made arrangements to visit Fort Huachuca, Arizona, home of the U.S. Army Intelligence Center of Excellence and the primary node for the Distributed Common Ground System Army, DCGSA, the intelligence database used by Army analysts worldwide. Chen still held a top-secret SCI clearance. It had not been revoked, though it would likely be suspended once she filed her IG complaint. She used her clearance to request temporary access to a DCGSA terminal at Fort Huachuca's SCIF, claiming she needed to retrieve archived intelligence reports for a post-separation academic research project. The request was approved within 24 hours, a testament to the bureaucratic inertia that often worked in favor of people with proper credentials. On 17th of November 2024, Chen flew from Baltimore to Tucson, rented a car, and drove 75 miles southeast to Fort Huachuca. She checked into the Landmark Inn on the base, presented her military retiree ID and clearance verification at the SCIF entrance, and signed the access roster. The DCGSA terminal was located in Building 52420, a windowless concrete structure surrounded by double fences and guard towers. Inside, the CF was divided into cubicles, each equipped with a workstation connected to JWICS, Joint Worldwide Intelligence Communication System, the classified network used for top-secret SCI information. Chen logged in using her legacy credentials, still active since no one had thought to deactivate them after her separation, and navigated to the DCGSA Intelligence Repository. She entered her search parameters: Theater, CENTCOM, Central Command, Country, Yemen. Date range: 1st January 2022, 30 September 2022. Originator: 902nd MI Group. Classification: TS-SCI. The system returned 0 results. Chen frowned. She had personally written 47 intelligence reports during her Yemen deployment. Every report had been uploaded to DCGSA, classified TS-SCI, and tagged with her unit designation. The reports covered Iranian IRGC activity, weapons proliferation networks, Yemeni tribal dynamics, and tactical targeting recommendations. They should have been in the system. She broadened the search, removed the date range, removed the unit designation, searched only for Yemen and IRGC. 32 results appeared. None were from 2022. The most recent was from December 2021. The oldest was from 2018. Someone had deleted every intelligence report from the Yemen deployment. Chen navigated to the system audit log, which tracked all user activity: logins, searches, uploads, deletions. She searched for her own username: Chen Sarah, 902 Miggy. Activity log: Chen Sarah, 902 Miggy. Date, year, action, target, result, 2022-02-18. Upload, intel report, YEM 2022-021, success, 2022-02-18. Upload, intel report, YEM 2022-022, success, 2022-02-24. Upload, intel report, YEM 2022-023, success, 44 additional uploads, 2022-09-28. Upload, intel report, YM 2022-047, success, 2023-03-15. Bulk delete, YEM 2022, 47 reports. Success authorized by DI admin Web MM. Chen stared at the screen. On 15th March 2023, the same day her DD-214 had been modified, someone using the account DI admin Web EM had deleted all 47 of her intelligence reports from the DCGSA system. This was not classification. You did not delete classified intelligence reports. You archived them with restricted access. Deletion violated intelligence community policy, which required retention of all finished intelligence for historical and legal purposes. Chen took screenshots of the audit log using the SCIF's approved documentation procedure. She filed a data extraction request, claiming she needed copies of her activity log for VA benefits documentation. The request was approved by the SCIF security officer, who generated a classified PDF of the audit log and transferred it to a JWICS email account Chen had set up for this purpose. She logged out, signed the exit roster, and returned to her rental car. She now had proof that Webb's administrative account had deleted operational intelligence from a classified database. On the same day, he had modified her service record. This was evidence of systematic evidence destruction, obstruction of any future investigation. Who authorized the deletion of 47 intelligence reports from a classified database? And was this destruction of evidence part of a broader cover-up to prevent investigators from discovering the truth about the Yemen operation? Chen had anticipated that Webb might delete intelligence from official databases. That was why, during her deployment, she had maintained a personal backup of key documents on an unclassified thumb drive. The practice was technically against regulations. Classified information was not supposed to be transferred to unclassified media, but intelligence officers routinely violated this rule when working in austere environments where network connectivity was unreliable. Chen's backup drive contained sanitized versions of her intelligence reports. All classified source information redacted, but the analytical conclusions and supporting evidence preserved. She had given a copy of this drive to Hassan al-Rashid, her Yemeni interpreter, in case she was killed and someone needed to reconstruct her work. Hassan was dead, but his widow, Layla al-Rashid, had fled Yemen after Hassan's murder and was now living in Djibouti as a refugee under the protection of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR. Chen had maintained contact with Layla through encrypted email. After Hassan's death, Chen had sent Layla $5,000 from her own savings to help with relocation expenses. Layla had been grateful but cautious. She feared that Iranian intelligence services might target her if they learned of her connection to U.S. intelligence operations. Chen composed an encrypted email to Layla Dalrashid, 1978@protonmail.com, from Sarah Chen, secure@protonmail.com. Subject: Request for Hassan's materials. Layla, I hope this message finds you and your children safe. I am writing because I need your help with something that may finally bring justice for Hassan's death. When I worked with Hassan in Yemen, I gave him a small USB drive containing copies of my intelligence reports. I am now attempting to expose the U.S. government officials whose negligence led to the attack that killed Hassan and 23 American soldiers. But those officials have deleted the reports from official databases. If you still have the USB drive Hassan kept, it would provide critical evidence. I understand this request puts you at risk. If you are unwilling or unable to help, I completely understand. But if you can send me the drive, I will use it to hold the responsible parties accountable. Please let me know. I can arrange secure transport through the U.S. Embassy in Djibouti if necessary. With respect and gratitude, Sarah Chen sent the message at 2100 hours on 17th November. She did not expect an immediate response. Layla's internet access was intermittent, and she was understandably wary of any communication that might compromise her safety. But 8 hours later, at 0500 hours on 18th of November, Chen's phone chimed with an encrypted email notification from Layla al-Rashid, 978.protonmail.com. Sarah M. Chen, secure@protonmail.com. Subject: Request for Hassan's materials. Sarah, Hassan kept the drive in a safe place. I have it. I will bring it to the U.S. Embassy in Djibouti tomorrow and give it to the regional security officer. Please tell me who to ask for so they know to expect me. Hassan believed in what you were doing. He believed the intelligence would save lives. He died because he trusted your country. If this drive can expose the people who failed to protect him, then his death will have meaning. I pray you succeed. Layla Chen immediately contacted the U.S. Embassy in Djibouti through official channels. She identified herself as a former Army intelligence officer and requested that the Regional Security Officer, RSO, facilitate the transfer of materials from a former confidential source. She provided Layla's name and UNHCR refugee registration number. The RSO, a State Department Diplomatic Security Service agent named Mark Stevens, called Chen within 4 hours. Ms. Chen, I've reviewed your request. We can facilitate the transfer, but I need to understand what materials we're handling. If this is classified information, I need authorization from the intelligence community. The materials are unclassified analytical summaries. Chen lied smoothly. I'm writing a research paper on tribal dynamics in southern Yemen, and Ms. al-Rashid has interview notes from her late husband that would be useful for academic purposes. Stevens hesitated. All right, I'll have Ms. al-Rashid come to the embassy tomorrow. We'll verify her identity, secure the materials, and send them via diplomatic pouch to the State Department in Washington. You can pick them up at the Harry S. Truman Building. Thank you. 3 days later, on 21st November 2024, Chen drove to Washington, D.C., presented her military retiree ID at the State Department's Bureau of Diplomatic Security, and received a sealed manila envelope containing Hassan al-Rashid's USB drive. She returned to her car, inserted the drive into her laptop, and opened the files. 47 intelligence reports, exactly as she had saved them. Each report documented Iranian IRGC activity, weapons shipments, corrupt Yemeni officials facilitating smuggling, and tactical intelligence that had been used to target IRGC operatives. Most importantly, every report was time-stamped with GPS coordinates and dates proving that Chen had been in Aden, Yemen, not Djibouti, from January to September 2022. Small victory. 2. Achieved. Chen has recovered the backup intelligence data that Webb believed had been destroyed, providing irrefutable proof of the operation's existence and her presence in Yemen. Chen needed one more piece of evidence, testimony from someone inside DIA who could confirm that Webb had personally ordered the deletion of intelligence data. Major Reeves had declined to testify officially, but Chen suspected there were others who might be persuaded, particularly if they believed Webb's actions had violated intelligence community regulations. She reached out to Major Andrew Kowalski, a 35F intelligence analyst who had served as the senior targeting officer for the Yemen operation. Kowalski had left DIA in mid-2023 and was now working as a defense contractor at KC International, earning a six-figure salary analyzing intelligence for Special Operations Command. Chen messaged him via LinkedIn, using professional language that would not raise red flags if monitored. Chen: Andy, I'm working on a project related to intelligence retention policies for compartmented programs. Would you be willing to discuss your experiences managing classified databases during your time at DIA? I'm particularly interested in deletion protocols for finished intelligence. Happy to meet in person if you're in the DC area. Kowalski responded within 24 hours. Kowalski: Sarah, I'd be happy to talk, but I should warn you, if this is about what I think it's about, you need to be very careful. Let's meet somewhere discreet. How about the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, Udvar Hazy Center in Chantilly? Saturday at 1400. The choice of location was significant. The Udvar Hazy Center was a massive hangar housing historic aircraft, located near Dulles Airport. It was public, crowded, and had poor cellular reception, ideal for a conversation that participants wanted to keep off the record. On Saturday, 23rd November, Chen drove to Chantilly and met Kowalski beneath the suspended fuselage of the Space Shuttle Discovery. He was a lean man in his late 30s, wearing civilian clothes and aviator sunglasses despite being indoors. Sarah, he said quietly, I know why you're here, and I need you to understand. I'm not testifying. I signed NDAs with my employer, and I have a family to support. I understand. I'm not asking you to testify, I just need to understand the timeline. In March 2023, were you ordered to delete intelligence reports related to the Yemen operation? Kowalski glanced around, confirming no one was within earshot. Yes, I was still at DIA in March 2023, working in the Counterintelligence and Security Division. On 14th of March, I received a tasking from the Deputy Director's Office, Webb's office, to conduct a data hygiene review of DCGS-A. The tasking memo said we needed to identify and remove duplicate or obsolete intelligence products related to closed operations. The memo listed specific search terms: Yemen, 902nd MI Group, IRGC, date range January-September 2022. Did the memo explain why these reports needed to be deleted? It said the operation had been reclassified into a higher compartment and that the reports needed to be moved to a different database with more restrictive access controls. But when I started the deletion process, I realized the reports weren't being moved. They were being permanently deleted. No archival copy, no transfer to another system, just gone. Did you object? I raised the concern with my branch chief, Nicole Hayes. She told me the order came directly from Webb and that I was to execute it without question. She said the operation was politically sensitive and that Webb had authority from the director to compartmentalize it as he saw fit. So Hayes knew. She approved it, and she made sure the audit logs showed that I executed the deletion, not her or Webb. I was the scapegoat if anyone ever investigated. Chen's hands clenched. Colonel Rita Hayes, her mentor, the woman who had guided her career for 12 years, had not only betrayed her, but had structured the betrayal to ensure that Kowalski, a junior officer, would take the fall if the conspiracy was ever exposed. Andy, I have documentation showing that the deletions were authorized by an account called DAdmin WebM. Can you confirm that account belongs to Webb's office? Yes, That's Webb's administrative account. He has a personal JWix account for operational use, but DIA admin WebM is his system administration account, used for database management functions. Only Webb and his executive officer have access to that account, so Webb personally ordered the deletions. Yes. And Hayes covered for him. Yes. Chen exhaled slowly. Andy, I'm filing an IG complaint. I have metadata showing the deletions, audit logs, and now your confirmation of the tasking order. I'm not asking you to testify publicly, but if the IG investigation interviews you, will you tell the truth? Kowalski removed his sunglasses and looked at her directly. Sarah, if the IG asks me directly, I'll tell the truth, but I won't volunteer. I can't afford to burn my bridges with DOD. My company's entire business depends on defense contracts. If I become a whistleblower, I'll never work in this industry again. I understand. Kowalski replaced his sunglasses. Good luck, Sarah. You're doing the right thing, but you're going to pay a heavy price for it. Major Kowalski has confirmed that Webb personally ordered the deletion of 47 intelligence reports, and that Colonel Hayes approved the destruction to protect Webb. The conspiracy extends beyond Webb to his subordinate commanders, who prioritized institutional loyalty over legal compliance. Chen returned to Baltimore with enough evidence to destroy Webb's career. She had metadata showing DD-214 falsification. She had audit logs proving intelligence data deletion. She had testimony from Kowalski confirming the chain of command. She had Hassan's backup data proving the operation existed. She had statements from 14 Gold Star families documenting the denial of death benefits. But one question remained. Why had Colonel Rita Hayes, the woman Chen had trusted more than anyone in her career, betrayed her? Chen decided to confront Hayes directly, not for vindication or closure, but because she needed to understand the full scope of the conspiracy. Was Hayes acting under duress, threatened by Webb, or was she a willing participant, protecting her own career at the expense of Chen and the 23 dead soldiers? Chen messaged Hayes via signal. Chen, ma'am, I need to speak with you in person. It's urgent. Can we meet tomorrow? Hayes responded immediately. Hayes, Sarah, I know what you're planning. Don't do this. You will destroy your career and accomplish nothing. Webb is untouchable. The operation was properly compartmentalized. Your IG complaint will be dismissed as the grievance of a disgruntled former employee. Please, for your own sake, let this go. Chen, I can't let it go. 23. Families are suffering because Webb prioritized his career over their benefits. I have evidence of systematic falsification. If you cooperate with the IG investigation, you can minimize your own liability. But if you continue to cover for Webb, you'll go down with him. Hayes, Sarah, you don't understand how this works. Webb has the director's support. He has the secretary's support. He has Senate Armed Services Committee backing. He's going to be confirmed as 08, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. If you file this complaint, you will be investigated for unauthorized disclosure. Your clearance will be revoked. You will be blacklisted from every intelligence agency and defense contractor in the country. Is that what you want? Chen, what I want is justice for 23 dead soldiers and their families. What do you want, ma'am? Long pause. 3 minutes. 5 minutes. Finally, Hayes, I want to survive until retirement. I have 22 years in, Sarah. I'm 3 years from retirement with full pension. I can't afford to be the martyr. I'm sorry. Chen stared at the message. Hayes was 6 months from retirement when Chen had deployed to Yemen. She was now 3 years from retirement, which meant she had been passed over for promotion, likely because she had cooperated with Webb's cover-up but had not been rewarded for it. Hayes had sacrificed her integrity to protect Webb, and in exchange, she had received nothing. Her career had stalled, her reputation was compromised, and now she was trapped, too complicit to blow the whistle, too junior to escape consequences if the conspiracy was exposed. Chen typed a final message. Chen, ma'am, I'm filing the complaint tomorrow. The IG will interview you. You'll have a choice. Tell the truth and accept responsibility, or lie and commit perjury. I hope you choose correctly. Hayes, Sarah, please. Chen blocked the number. She did not need to hear Hayes's excuses. She understood the institutional calculus that had led Hayes to betray her: risk aversion, careerism, fear of retaliation. These were the same forces that had kept every other Yemen veteran silent. But Chen had reached the point where silence cost more than speaking. The families were suffering, the dead were dishonored, and the system that had failed them would continue to fail others unless someone forced accountability. She opened her laptop and began drafting the formal Inspector General complaint. The opening paragraph read, I, Sarah M. Chen, former Chief Warrant Officer 3, United States Army, hereby file a formal complaint alleging that Brigadier General Marcus Webb, Deputy Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, engaged in systematic falsification of military service records, obstruction of benefits claims, and destruction of classified intelligence data in order to conceal his negligence in authorizing a high-risk operation that resulted in 23 U.S. military fatalities. She wrote for 6 hours straight, attaching 127 pages of supporting documentation, metadata screenshots, audit logs, FOIA requests, Gold Star family statements, Hassan's backup intelligence reports, and Kowalski's informal confirmation. At 0300 hours on 25th of November 2024, she submitted the complaint electronically to the Department of Defense Office of Inspector General, the Defense Intelligence Agency Office of Inspector General, and, per Major Reeves's advice, the Senate Armed Services Committee via the office of Senator Elizabeth Warren, who had a reputation for aggressive oversight of military personnel issues. The automated response confirmed receipt, Complaint ID DODIG 2024-9847. Chen closed her laptop, leaned back in her chair, and felt the weight of what she had just set in motion. There was no going back now. Within 48 hours, Webb would be notified of the complaint. Within a week, Chen's security clearance would be suspended. Within a month, the institutional machine would begin its effort to discredit her, isolate her, and destroy her credibility. But she had done the right thing, and in the end, that was the only metric that mattered. Loop 4 opens. Colonel Rita Hayes, Chen's mentor, and the person who had guided her career for 12 years, chose institutional survival over moral courage. Hayes admitted that Webb ordered the cover-up and that she approved it, sacrificing her integrity to avoid retaliation. The question now is whether Hayes will commit perjury to protect Webb, or whether she will break under IG investigation and provide the testimony that could finally hold Webb accountable. The Department of Defense Office of Inspector General operated according to strict protocols outlined in DoD Instruction 7050-03. Upon receiving a complaint alleging senior official misconduct, the IG was required to notify the subject of the complaint within 72 hours and initiate a preliminary inquiry to determine whether the allegations warranted a full investigation. On 27 November 2024, 48 hours after Chen submitted her complaint, Brigadier General Marcus Webb received formal notification via encrypted email to his JSOC account from DoD Investigations mail.mil2 Webb Marcus.07 DIA mail.semile. Mil subject, Notification of Inspector General Complaint BG Webb. You are hereby notified that the Department of Defense Office of Inspector General has received a formal complaint, DoDIG 2024-9847, alleging misconduct related to your official duties as Deputy Director, Defense Intelligence Agency. The complaint alleges 1. Falsification of military service records, DD Form 214, for personnel who served under your command. 2. Obstruction of VA benefits claims for Gold Star families. 3. Destruction of classified intelligence data to conceal operational failures. 4. Retaliation against subordinates who raised concerns, pursuant to DoD Instruction 7052.03. You are required to provide a written response to these allegations within 10 business days. You may consult legal counsel. You are advised not to destroy any documents, communications, or records related to the matters described in the complaint. You are further advised that Senate Armed Services Committee staff have been notified of this complaint and may conduct parallel oversight. Respectfully, COL Jennifer Martinez, USAF Deputy Inspector General for Administrative Investigations. Webb read the email 3 times, then he forwarded it to his executive officer with a single-line directive: schedule emergency meeting with Director and General Counsel, 0800 tomorrow. But he was already too late. Senator Elizabeth Warren's office had received Chen's complaint simultaneously with the IG, and Warren, whose staff included former military judge advocates general with expertise in military justice, recognized the political implications immediately. On 28 November 2024, Senator Warren sent a letter to the Secretary of Defense with copies to the Senate Armed Services Committee Chair and Ranking Member, the Honorable Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Defense, 1000 Defense, Pentagon, Washington, DC 2301. Dear Secretary Austin, I write to bring to your attention serious allegations of misconduct involving Brigadier General Marcus Webb, currently nominated for promotion to Lieutenant General. My office has received a formal complaint from a former Army intelligence officer alleging that General Webb falsified service records of military personnel to conceal a classified operation in Yemen that resulted in 23 U.S. fatalities, obstructed death benefits for Gold Star families by denying the existence of combat operations, destroyed classified intelligence to prevent oversight. I have reviewed supporting documentation provided by the complainant, including metadata analysis, audit logs, and sworn statements from Gold Star families. These allegations are credible and warrant immediate investigation. I respectfully request that you 1. Place General Webb's nomination on administrative hold pending IG investigation. 2. Order preservation of all records related to Yemen operations from January-September 2022. 3. Direct DIA to immediately review and correct any falsified DD2 Martoon records. 4. Authorize expedited processing of death benefits for affected Gold Star families. I further request that your office provide my staff with a briefing on this matter within 30 days. The families of 23 fallen service members deserve better than bureaucratic obstruction. I look forward to your prompt response. Sincerely, Elizabeth Warren, United States Senator. The letter was leaked to the Washington Post within 24 hours. On 29 November 2024, the Post published a front-page story. Senator alleges Pentagon general falsified records, denied benefits to Gold Star families. The article quoted portions of Chen's IG complaint, cited Senator Warren's letter, and included statements from 2 Gold Star family members, Amanda Rodriguez and Jennifer Hawkins. By 30th November, Webb's 08 nomination was formally placed on hold by the Senate Armed Services Committee. The DIA Director, Lieutenant General Scott Morrison, issued a terse statement. DIA takes all allegations of misconduct seriously and will cooperate fully with the Inspector General investigation. Colonel Rita Hayes received a phone call from the IG's office on 1 December, scheduling her for an interview on 5 December. Major Andrew Kowalski received a similar call, scheduling his interview for 6 December. CW3 Maria Santos, SFC David Torres, and 11 other Yemen veterans received calls between 2 through 8 December. The institutional machine had shifted into crisis management mode, but the nature of the crisis had changed. Webb was no longer in control of the narrative. Chen had forced the system to respond, not in secret, but under public and congressional scrutiny. The cover-up, which had worked perfectly when executed in classified silence, was now collapsing under the weight of transparency. Chen received her own call from the IG on 2 December, scheduling her formal interview for 9 December. The investigator, a Marine Corps colonel named David Chen, no relation, advised her that she was considered a protected disclosure under the Whistleblower Protection Act, and that any retaliation against her would constitute a separate violation. Ms. Chen, Colonel Chen said over the secure phone line, you should know that your complaint has been elevated to a priority investigation. The Secretary of Defense has personally directed us to complete the preliminary inquiry within 60 days. That's unusually fast for allegations of this magnitude. It means someone very senior wants answers quickly, either to clear General Webb or to remove him before his nomination proceeds. Do you believe my allegations are credible? Chen asked. I believe your documentation is thorough, Colonel Chen replied carefully, but my personal opinion is irrelevant. What matters is whether the evidence supports a finding of misconduct under the Uniform Code of Military Justice and DoD regulations. We'll interview all relevant witnesses, examine all available records, and provide a factual report to the Secretary. The Secretary will decide what action, if any, to take. Chen understood. The IG could investigate, but only the Secretary of Defense could hold a general officer accountable. And the Secretary's decision would be influenced not by justice, but by politics. The cost of admitting institutional failure versus the cost of defending a corrupt officer. The table has turned. Chen is no longer fighting alone. She has forced the system to investigate itself under public scrutiny with Senate oversight, but the outcome remains uncertain. To understand how Chief Warrant Officer Chen proved she was in Yemen despite official records claiming otherwise, we need to understand blast pattern forensics, the science of analyzing injury patterns to determine explosive characteristics. On 14th of February 2022, at approximately 13:47 hours local time, a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device, VBIED, detonated in the Al-Tawahi district of Aden, Yemen. The explosive device consisted of approximately 500 kilograms of ammonium nitrate, fuel oil, ANFO, mixture, a common improvised explosive used by insurgent groups throughout the Middle East. ANFO explosives detonate at approximately 5,200 meters per second, generating an overpressure wave that propagates outward from the point of detonation. At the moment of detonation, the explosive creates a blast wave with a peak overpressure of approximately 140 pounds per square inch, psi, at a distance of 5 meters. At 10 meters, the overpressure drops to 45 psi. At 15 meters, where Chief Chen was positioned, the overpressure was approximately 18 psi. 18 psi is sufficient to cause serious injury, but not immediate fatality. The human body can withstand overpressures up to 25 psi before experiencing catastrophic internal injuries. At 18 psi, the primary effects are ruptured eardrums, pulmonary contusions, and traumatic brain injury due to rapid compression and decompression of the skull. But blast pressure is only the primary mechanism of injury. The secondary mechanism is fragmentation. Steel ball bearings, nails, and vehicle debris propelled outward at velocities exceeding 2,000 meters per second. These fragments create penetrating injuries with characteristic patterns. Chief Chen's medical records from Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, dated 18 February 2022, document the following injuries. Injury. Assessment. Tympanic membrane rupture, bilateral, consistent with blast overpressure exposure. Pulmonary contusion, moderate, consistent with blast wave compression. Diffuse axonal injury, mild moderate TBI, consistent with rapid head acceleration, deceleration. Burn pattern, left forearm 22 centimeters length, consistent with thermal exposure to propellant flash, fragmentation wounds. Left shoulder, 14 discrete entry points, consistent with secondary fragmentation from vehicle-borne explosive. The most critical evidence is the burn pattern. Thermal flash from ANFO detonation reaches temperatures of approximately 2,400 degrees Celsius for a duration of 0.3 seconds. This creates a specific burn characteristic, full-thickness burns with sharp demarcation lines, indicating exposure to intense heat, followed by rapid cooling. Forensic analysis of Chen's burn scars, conducted by Dr. Rachel Kim, a forensic pathologist at Walter Reed, concluded burn pattern consistent with exposure to high-order explosive detonation at standoff distance of 12-18 meters. Thermal characteristics match ANFO or similar improvised explosive. Injury pattern inconsistent with training accident, vehicle fire, or other non-combat scenarios. Assessment. Combat-related injury, high confidence. The fragmentation pattern provided additional evidence. The 14 entry points on Chen's left shoulder were analyzed using X-ray and CT imaging. Each fragment was mapped in three-dimensional space, and trajectories were calculated based on angle of entry and depth of penetration. The trajectory analysis revealed that all 14 fragments originated from a single point source, located 15 meters southwest of Chen's position. The fragments were consistent with steel ball bearings, 6 mm diameter, commonly used in vehicle-borne explosives throughout the Middle East. This analysis allowed forensic experts to reconstruct the explosion. A vehicle parked 15 meters from Chen's position, detonating with 500 kg of ANFO, propelling steel ball bearings outward in a radial pattern. One of those bearings struck the concrete wall behind Chen, deflecting downward and striking her shoulder. But the most damning evidence was geographic. The chemical composition of the ANFO residue, trace amounts embedded in Chen's burn tissue, contained isotopic signatures consistent with ammonium nitrate manufactured in the Arabian Peninsula. Specifically, the nitrogen isotope ratio, D15N, matched fertilizer produced by Yemeni agricultural suppliers, not fertilizers used in Djibouti or other East African countries. This isotopic fingerprint proved with scientific certainty that Chen's injuries were sustained in Yemen, not Djibouti. When Brigadier General Webb was confronted with this evidence during the IG investigation, he claimed that Chen could have been injured during a temporary duty assignment to Yemen that was not documented on her DD-214 due to operational security. But this explanation created new problems. If Chen had been temporarily assigned to Yemen, Her travel orders and per diem payments would have been documented in the Defense Finance and Accounting Service, DFAS database. No such records existed. The forensic evidence was irrefutable. Chen had been in Yemen long enough to sustain combat injuries, but the official record claimed she had been in Djibouti the entire time. This contradiction could only be resolved in one of two ways. Either the medical records were fabricated, impossible, as they had been generated by military physicians in real time, or the DD-214 was falsified, exactly what Chen alleged. I remember the moment before the explosion. Not in the way most people remember traumatic events, fragmented, emotional, distorted by fear, but in the precise, methodical way intelligence officers are trained to document critical incidents. It was 1347 hours. I was standing in the courtyard of Al-Jumhuriya Hospital, reviewing a sketch map that Hassan al-Rashid had drawn of Iranian weapons storage facilities. The temperature was 32 degrees Celsius, humidity 68%, wind southeast at 12 kilometers per hour. I recorded these details in my tactical notebook because they affected our surveillance plan for that evening. Hassan was explaining the guard rotation schedule when I heard the sound. Not the explosion itself. Sound travels slower than the blast wave, but the mechanical click of a remote detonator, transmitted through the ground as a low-frequency vibration. I had been trained to recognize that sound during my deployment to Afghanistan in 2014. It meant you have 0.2 seconds before detonation. I did three things in those 0.2 seconds. First, I grabbed Hassan's arm and pulled him toward the concrete wall behind us. Concrete provides blast protection. Vehicles do not. Second, I opened my mouth and covered my ears. This equalizes pressure across the tympanic membrane, reducing rupture risk. Third, I turned my head away from the anticipated blast source, protecting my face and eyes. Then the world became physics. The blast wave arrived first, 6,900 meters per second, faster than sound. My body registered it as sudden compression, not pain, but pressure, as if I had been submerged 30 meters underwater in an instant. My lungs compressed. My eardrums ruptured despite my precautions. My brain was subjected to rapid acceleration as the shock wave propagated through my skull at the speed of sound in tissue, approximately 1,540 meters per second. This is how traumatic brain injury occurs, not from external impact, but from internal shearing forces as brain tissue, which has the consistency of gelatin, moves inside the rigid skull. The acceleration causes axons, the long fibers connecting neurons, to stretch and tear. This is called diffuse axonal injury, DAI, and it is the signature injury of blast exposure. I did not lose consciousness. DAI does not always cause unconsciousness. Instead, I experienced immediate neurological symptoms, visual disturbance, my peripheral vision pixelated, as if my eyes were cameras losing signal, auditory distortion. All sound became muffled, replaced by a high-frequency tone at approximately 4,000 Hz, later confirmed via audiometry as tinnitus caused by cochlear hair cell damage. Cognitive disruption. I could not immediately recall the authentication code I needed to radio for medevac. The code was 6 digits, committed to memory through repetition, but for 12 seconds, my brain could not access it. I stood there, radio in hand, blood running down my neck from my ruptured eardrums, unable to remember 6 numbers. This is the reality of TBI. It is not dramatic. It is not visible. It is the sudden, terrifying realization that your brain, the organ you have trusted for 34 years to process information accurately, is no longer reliable. I managed to recall the authentication code by using a cognitive workaround. I visualized the piece of paper where I had first written the code during the mission brief. I read the numbers from my visual memory. This technique, called episodic memory retrieval, bypasses damaged working memory pathways. It took me 12 seconds to retrieve 6 digits. In combat, 12 seconds can be fatal, but I completed the radio call. I directed the medevac. I triaged casualties. And I did not tell anyone that my brain was not functioning correctly, because revealing cognitive impairment in a combat zone results in immediate medical evacuation, and evacuation meant abandoning my team, my mission, and my sources. So I managed it. I developed protocols. Protocol 1, sleep discipline. TBI disrupts the brain's glymphatic system, which clears metabolic waste during sleep. Without adequate sleep, damaged neurons cannot repair. I enforced a minimum 6-hour sleep schedule, even during high-tempo operations. Other officers worked 20-hour days. I worked 16 hours and slept 6, and I was more effective than they were because my brain functioned. Protocol 2. Cognitive load reduction. Damaged brains fatigue quickly when processing complex information. I structured my day to handle high-complexity tasks, source interrogations, intelligence analysis, during morning hours when cognitive function was optimal. Administrative tasks, email, reports, were relegated to afternoon hours when cognitive fatigue was acceptable. Protocol 3. Environmental control. Noise, bright lights, and rapid visual motion exacerbate TBI symptoms. I conducted sensitive meetings in quiet rooms with controlled lighting. I avoided crowded spaces. I wore sunglasses outdoors not for tactical reasons, but to reduce photophobia. Protocol 4. Structured decision-making. TBI impairs executive function, the brain's ability to make complex decisions under pressure. I compensated by externalizing decisions. I created decision trees, flowcharts, and checklists for high-stakes scenarios. When faced with a crisis, I did not rely on intuition. I followed the checklist. These protocols were not taught at Fort Huachuca. I developed them through trial and error, guided by medical literature I read on my laptop in my barracks at night. The Army's official TBI management guidance was inadequate. Rest, hydration, and cognitive behavioral therapy. That works for mild TBI sustained in garrison. It does not work for moderate TBI sustained in a combat zone where rest is a luxury and evacuation is career death. I managed my TBI successfully enough that no one, not my commander, not my subordinates, not even the Army physicians who examined me, realized how impaired I was. When I returned from Yemen and underwent the mandatory post-deployment health assessment, I lied on the TBI screening questionnaire. I answered no to questions about headaches, memory problems, and balance issues. I passed the cognitive assessment by over-preparing. I memorized the word lists, practiced the reaction time tests, and rehearsed the interview responses. I lied because the alternative, admitting TBI, meant medical discharge, loss of security clearance, and termination of my career. I had spent 15 years building expertise. I was not going to let a blast wave end it, but the cost of that lie was high. By the time I applied for VA disability benefits 18 months later, my TBI symptoms had progressed from moderate to severe. The visual disturbances were constant. The tinnitus never stopped. My executive function was deteriorating. I struggled to manage finances, forgot appointments, and made impulsive decisions that damaged relationships. And when I finally sought help, the VA denied my claim because my service record, falsified by Webb, claimed I had never been exposed to combat. This is why I filed the IG complaint. Not for myself. For the other soldiers who are managing TBIs in silence, afraid to seek help because the system punishes honesty and rewards lies. On 5 December 2024, Colonel Rita Hayes sat in an interview room at the Defense Intelligence Agency headquarters, facing 2 Inspector General investigators, Colonel David Chen, USMC, and Ms. Patricia Wong, civilian investigator, former FBI special agent. The interview was conducted under oath, recorded via digital audio, and transcribed in real time by a court reporter. Hayes had been advised of her rights under Article 31 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the military equivalent of Miranda rights, and had declined to have legal counsel present. This was her first mistake. Col Chen, Colonel Hayes, thank you for your cooperation. I want to start by establishing your role in the events described in CW3 Chen's complaint. Were you the commander of the 902nd Military Intelligence Group during the Yemen deployment from January to September 2022? Hayes: Yes. Col Chen: Did you approve Chief Chen's deployment orders to Yemen? Hayes: I signed the deployment orders, yes, but the operation was directed by DIA headquarters, specifically by Brigadier General Webb's office. My role was administrative. Col Chen: When you say administrative, what do you mean? Hayes: I provided personnel to support the operation. I did not design the mission, select the targets, or establish the operational parameters. Those decisions were made at DIA headquarters. MS Wong: Colonel, let's talk about what happened after the February 2022 attack. Were you aware that 23 U.S. personnel were killed in that attack? Hayes: Yes. I received casualty notification within hours of the incident. MS Wong: Were you aware that those casualties' DD-214 records were subsequently modified to remove references to Yemen and insert references to Djibouti? Hayes hesitated. This was the critical moment. If she lied, she would commit perjury, a felony under 18 U.S.C. per 1621. If she told the truth, she would incriminate herself. Hayes, I was aware that the operation was reclassified after the attack. Col Chen, that's not what I asked. I asked whether you were aware that service records were modified to falsify deployment locations. Hayes, the modifications were made to protect operational security. Ms. Wong, Colonel Hayes, with respect, that's not an answer. Were the modifications made to protect operational security, or were they made to conceal General Webb's involvement in the operation? Silence. Hayes's hands were trembling. She looked at the door, as if considering whether she could leave, but she was under oath, and walking out of an IG interview would constitute obstruction of justice. Hayes, I need to consult with legal counsel. Col Chen, you have that right, but I want to be clear. If you terminate this interview now and return with counsel, we will interpret that as an indication that you have information that could incriminate you. That will affect how we characterize your role in our report. If you cooperate now, we can note that you provided voluntary testimony. Hayes closed her eyes. She was making the calculation. Cooperate and implicate herself in the cover-up, or refuse and face potential prosecution. She chose cooperation. Hayes, General Webb called me on 16th of February 2022, 2 days after the attack. He told me that the operation had been compromised by a leak and that Iranian intelligence had identified our personnel. He said that for force protection reasons, the operation needed to be compartmentalized at a higher level. He ordered me to submit a request to reclassify the operation under a Special Access Program designation. Ms. Wong, did he explain why reclassifying the operation required modifying service records? Hayes, he said that if the operation remained in personnel files, Iranian intelligence could identify participants through FOIA requests or data breaches. He said we needed to mask the deployment to protect our people. Col Chen, Colonel, did you believe that explanation? Hayes, at the time, yes. I thought he was trying to protect us. Ms. Wong, when did you realize he was not trying to protect you? Hayes, in March 2023. General Webb was nominated for 08. His nomination package was circulated for review. I read it. It claimed that he had successfully managed high-risk operations with 0 U.S. casualties. That's when I realized. He hadn't reclassified the operation to protect us. He'd done it to erase the 23 casualties from his record. Col Chen, did you object? Hayes, I called him. I told him that the families of the 23 dead soldiers were being denied benefits because the official record claimed they hadn't been in combat. I told him this was wrong. He told me that the benefits issue would be resolved through administrative channels, and that I needed to trust the process. Ms. Wong, but the benefits were never resolved, were they? Hayes, no. Col Chen, Colonel Hayes, you approved the deletion of 47 intelligence reports from DCGS-A in March 2023. Major Kowalski testified that you told him the deletion order came from General Webb. Is that accurate? Hayes, yes. Ms. Wong, did you understand that deleting those reports violated intelligence community retention policies? Hayes, yes. Col Chen, then why did you approve it? Hayes's voice broke. For the first time in the interview, she showed emotion, not anger, not defiance, but exhaustion. Hayes, because I was afraid. General Webb made it clear that if I didn't cooperate, he would investigate me for security violations during the Yemen operation. He said he had documentation showing I had failed to properly safeguard classified materials. He said he could revoke my security clearance and end my career 3 years before retirement. I have a daughter in college. I have a mortgage. I couldn't afford to lose my pension. So I did what he asked. Ms. Wong, Colonel, you are aware that what you just described is blackmail, correct? Hayes, yes. Col Chen, and you are aware that blackmail is a criminal offense, and that by cooperating with General Webb's demands, you may have participated in obstruction of justice? Hayes, yes. Silence. Col Chen, Colonel Hayes, we appreciate your honesty. Your testimony will be included in our report to the Secretary of Defense. You should consult with legal counsel regarding your potential criminal liability. This interview is concluded. Loop 4 closes. Colonel Rita Hayes has admitted under oath that she participated in the cover-up under duress, motivated by fear of retaliation and loss of pension. Her testimony provides direct evidence that Webb used blackmail to ensure cooperation and that the cover-up extended to destruction of intelligence records. On 15th January 2025, the Department of Defense Inspector General completed its investigation and delivered a 247-page report to the Secretary of Defense. The report's executive summary concluded, "Evidence supports findings that B.G. Marcus Webb engaged in misconduct including 1. Unauthorized modification of military personnel records. 2. Obstruction of VA benefits processing. 3. Destruction of classified intelligence records. And 4. Retaliation against subordinates. Recommend administrative action, referral to military justice authorities, and termination of 08 nomination." On 20th January 2025, the Secretary of Defense directed that an Article 15-6 investigation be conducted, a formal administrative investigation under military regulations. The investigating officer was Major General Karen Rodriguez, a two-star general from Army Cyber Command with no prior connection to DIA or Webb. On 3 February 2025, General Rodriguez convened an after-action review, AAR, at Fort Meade, Maryland. The AAR format, standard in military operations, required all participants to present factual accounts of events, identify problems, and recommend solutions. It was not a court-martial. No criminal charges were filed, but it was the military's method for assessing accountability. The AAR was held in a sensitive compartmented information facility, SCIF, with 3 presiding officers, M.G. Rodriguez, C.O.L. Martinez, the IG's deputy, and a representative from the Army's Office of the Judge Advocate General. Present were Brigadier General Marcus Webb, Chief Warrant Officer Sarah Chen, retired, Colonel Rita Hayes, Lieutenant General Scott Morrison, DIA Director, Major Andrew Kowalski, via secure video, 14 Gold Star family representatives, observing via separate SCIF, M.G. Rodriguez. This after-action review is convened to assess the events surrounding Operation Olive Branch, the compartmented intelligence operation conducted in Yemen from January to September 2022. We will follow standard AAR format, state the objective, review execution, identify problems, and discuss lessons learned. General Webb, please state the operational objective. Webb, ma'am. The objective was to develop intelligence on Iranian weapons proliferation networks operating through Aden, Yemen, and to provide tactical targeting support to JSOC elements conducting direct action missions against IRGC operatives. M.G. Rodriguez. Was this objective achieved? Webb. Partially. We identified key networks and facilitated 3 successful JSOC operations. However, the operation was compromised by an intelligence leak on 14th of February 2022, resulting in 23 U.S. casualties. M.G. Rodriguez, CW3 Chen, you were the senior counterintelligence officer on the ground. Do you agree with General Webb's characterization? This was the moment Chen had been waiting for. She stood, adjusted her posture, spine straight, shoulders back, military bearing, and delivered her response with the precision of an intelligence briefing. Chen. Ma'am, I agree that the objective was partially achieved. However, I disagree with the characterization of the 14 February attack as resulting from an intelligence leak. The attack resulted from insufficient force protection measures, inadequate counterintelligence screening of local partners, and failure to act on tactical warnings provided 48 hours prior to the incident. M.G. Rodriguez. Explain. Chen. On 12th of February 2022, one of my confidential sources reported that Iranian IRGC QF operatives had identified the location of our safe house in Aden. I reported this via JSOC to DIA headquarters, requested immediate relocation authorization, and recommended suspension of operations until we could establish a secure facility. My request was denied by General Webb's operations officer, who assessed the threat as non-credible. 48 hours later, the VBIAD attack occurred at the exact location my source had identified. Webb. Ma'am, if I may respond. M.G. Rodriguez. You'll have your opportunity, General. CW3 Chen. Continue. Chen. Ma'am, I believe the root cause of the February 2022 casualties was not an intelligence leak, but a leadership failure. General Webb authorized a high-risk operation without adequate force protection. When tactical warnings were provided, his staff dismissed them. When the operation failed catastrophically, he chose to conceal the failure rather than accept responsibility. Webb: Ma'am, this is speculation. M.G. Rodriguez: General Webb, I will ask you to remain silent until it is your turn to speak. CW3 Chen: Do you have evidence to support your assessment? Chen: Yes, ma'am. I have the JSOC message traffic showing my warning on 12th February and the denial from DIA headquarters. I can provide it to this review if classified disclosure is authorized. M.G. Rodriguez: It is. Colonel Martinez, please enter that traffic into the record. The JAG representative typed notes furiously. Hayes stared at her hands. Morrison's expression was stone. M.G. Rodriguez: CW3 Chen: Let's discuss the post-operation events. Why were service records modified? Chen: Ma'am, I assess that General Webb ordered the modification of service records to conceal his involvement in the failed operation. If personnel files showed that 47 intelligence personnel had deployed to Yemen under his authorization and that 23 of them had been killed, it would have triggered a congressional investigation. General Webb was nominated for promotion to 08 in March 2023. He could not afford that scrutiny. Webb: Ma'am, I must object. This is defamation. M.G. Rodriguez: General Webb, you will have your turn. CW3 Chen: Final question. You filed this complaint knowing it would end your career. Why? Chen paused. She had rehearsed this answer for 3 months. But now, standing in a skiff with the institutional machinery of the Department of Defense arrayed before her, she realized that rehearsed answers were inadequate. She needed to speak the truth, unfiltered. Chen: Ma'am, I filed this complaint because 23 soldiers died under my watch, and their families deserved better than lies. I filed this complaint because every intelligence officer is trained to report the truth, even when the truth is inconvenient. And I filed this complaint because the only way to stop institutional betrayal is to force institutions to confront their failures. M.G. Rodriguez: Thank you, CW3 Chen. General Webb, your turn. Respond to the allegations. Webb stood. He was a large man, 6'2", 220 pounds, with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. He looked directly at Rodriguez, not at Chen. Webb: Ma'am, I disagree with CW3 Chen's characterization. I authorized Operation Olive Branch based on intelligence assessments indicating that IRGC activity in Yemen posed a threat to U.S. forces in Iraq. I provided resources, personnel, and operational guidance. When I received CW3 Chen's warning on 12th of February, my staff assessed it using standard intelligence evaluation criteria. The source had not been validated. The information could not be corroborated. The decision to continue operations was made by competent officers using proper procedures. M.G. Rodriguez: General, did you personally review that warning? Webb: No, ma'am. I delegate tactical decisions to my staff. M.G. Rodriguez: Did your staff inform you that they had denied CW3 Chen's relocation request? Webb: I do not recall. M.G. Rodriguez: General, you don't recall being informed that your operation was compromised 48 hours before 23 soldiers were killed? Silence. Webb: Ma'am, I receive hundreds of intelligence reports daily. I cannot personally review every tactical warning. M.G. Rodriguez: But you personally authorized the modification of service records in March 2023, correct? Webb: Ma'am, the reclassification was done to protect operational security. M.G. Rodriguez: General Webb, the Inspector General's report documents that you used your administrative account, DIA admin Webb M, to modify 47 DD214 records. The report also documents that you deleted 47 intelligence reports from DCGSA. These actions were taken 2 weeks after you were nominated for 08. Do you deny these actions? Webb: Ma'am, I authorized those actions under my authority as Deputy Director. M.G. Rodriguez: Answer the question, General. Did you or did you not modify service records and delete intelligence reports in March 2023? Webb: Yes. M.G. Rodriguez: And did you do so to protect operational security or to conceal your role in the February 2022 casualties? Webb: Ma'am, I was protecting operational security. M.G. Rodriguez: Then explain why 18 Gold Star families have been denied death benefits as a direct result of your operational security measures. Silence. M.G. Rodriguez: General Webb, I'm going to give you an opportunity to demonstrate the leadership quality the Army expects of general officers. I am going to ask you to take responsibility, not legal responsibility, which will be determined by the JAG, but moral responsibility. Did your decisions contribute to the deaths of 23 soldiers and the suffering of their families? Webb's jaw tightened. He looked at Chen for the first time. She met his gaze without flinching. Webb, ma'am, I made decisions based on the information available at the time. In hindsight, I wish I had made different decisions. But I cannot accept responsibility for an intelligence leak that I did not cause. Chen felt something break inside her. Not anger, not disappointment, just clarity. Webb would never accept responsibility. The system would never force him to. Accountability, in institutions this large, was an illusion. But she had one move left. She stood again, without being called on. Chen, ma'am, may I respond? M.G. Rodriguez. Go ahead, CW3 Chen. Chen, General Webb is correct that he did not cause the intelligence leak, but he created the conditions that made the leak catastrophic. He authorized a high-risk operation without adequate force protection. He delegated critical decisions to staff who were not qualified to make them. And when his operation failed, he chose to protect his career instead of protecting the families of the fallen. Chen, ma'am, I am trained in extreme ownership, the principle that leaders accept full responsibility for everything in their area of operations. General Webb has just demonstrated the opposite. He has deflected responsibility to subordinates, to intelligence leaks, to circumstances beyond his control. Chen, I accept my responsibility. I should have insisted on relocation. I should have refused to continue operations. I should have gone outside the chain of command to force action. My failure to do those things contributed to 23 deaths. I own that. Chen. But General Webb must own his failure too. And his failure is greater than mine, because he had the authority to prevent the attack, and he chose not to. Then, when the attack occurred, he chose to erase it rather than learn from it. That is not leadership, ma'am. That is cowardice. The room was silent. Even the court reporter stopped typing. Webb's face flushed red, but he said nothing. M.G. Rodriguez. Thank you, CW3 Chen. This AAR is concluded. I will provide my report to the Secretary within 30 days. On 3rd of March 2025, the Secretary of Defense issued his decision. Memorandum 4, Lieutenant General Scott Morrison, Director, Defense Intelligence Agency. Subject, Administrative Action. Brigadier General Marcus Webb. 1. I have reviewed the findings of the Inspector General investigation and the Article 15.6 after-action review regarding B.G. Marcus Webb's conduct. 2. Findings. B.G. Webb engaged in conduct that violated DoD regulations, including unauthorized modification of personnel records and improper destruction of intelligence data. However, evidence does not support criminal prosecution under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. 3. Action. B.G. Webb will receive a letter of reprimand, filed in official personnel record. His nomination for promotion to Lieutenant General is withdrawn. He will retire at his current grade within 60 days. 4. Corrective measures. DIA will review and correct all DD-214 records affected by this incident. VA will expedite death benefits for affected Gold Star families. 5. This matter is closed. Chen read the memo 3 times. Webb was being allowed to retire, with full pension, full benefits, and the rank of Brigadier General. No court-martial, no criminal charges. Just a letter of reprimand and forced retirement. The families would get their death benefits, finally, but they would never get an apology. They would never get accountability. They would never hear Webb admit what he had done. This was the justice that institutions provided, technical correction without moral reckoning. Chen's phone rang. It was Amanda Rodriguez. Sarah, did you see the memo? I did. Is this it? A letter of reprimand. My husband is dead, and the general who killed him gets to retire with a pension. Chen's chest tightened. Amanda, I'm sorry. This is all the system will give us. It's not enough. I know. Sarah, thank you. For trying. For fighting. For not letting them bury Carlos. But this isn't justice. This is just process. I know. I'm sorry. Rodriguez hung up. Chen sat in her apartment staring at the memo, and felt the weight of institutional betrayal settle over her like a shroud. She had won. The families would get their benefits. The truth had been exposed. Webb's career was over, but 23 soldiers were still dead, and the system that had failed them was unchanged. Loop 2 closes. Hollow victory. The families received their death benefits. Webb received a reprimand. But justice, true accountability, was never delivered. The system protected itself, as it always does. 3 weeks later, on 24 March 2025, Chen attended a meeting of Gold Star families at the Army Community Center in Arlington, Virginia. 21 of the 23 families were present. Amanda Rodriguez opened the meeting. "Thank you all for coming. I know this has been a difficult year. We lost our loved ones. Then we lost their honor. Then we fought to get it back. And we succeeded. Partially. Our death benefits were approved. Our spouses' service records are being corrected. But the man responsible for their deaths is retired with a pension." She turned to Chen. "Sarah, you sacrificed your career to expose the truth. We want you to know. We see you. We honor you. And we will never forget what you did for us." The families applauded. Chen felt her eyes water, not from sadness, but from relief. She had not failed them. She had done what she could. After the meeting, Jennifer Hawkins approached Chen. "Sarah, I wanted to tell you something. My son, my oldest, he's 9 now, asked me last week what his dad did in the Army. I told him the truth. His dad was a ranger. He fought in Yemen. He died protecting his brothers. And because of you, I can tell him that story without lying. You gave us back our husband's honor. That matters more than money." Chen nodded. She could not speak. If she spoke, she would cry, and she had promised herself she would not cry. On 1 April 2025, Chen received a letter from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Rating decision: Veteran, Chen, Sarah M. Claim: service connection for traumatic brain injury, TBI. Decision: approved rating: 100% permanent and total disability. Reason: medical evidence confirms combat-related TBI sustained in Aden, Yemen on 14 February 2022. Service record amended to reflect combat deployment. Claimant eligible for full VA healthcare, disability compensation, $3,800 a month, and vocational rehabilitation. Chen read the letter twice. Her identity had been restored, not in her DD-214, which still listed Djibouti because the classification compartment remained active, but in her medical record. The VA acknowledged what the DoD would not. She had been in combat. She had been wounded. She deserved care. It was not complete justice, but it was recognition, and sometimes recognition was enough. On 15 April 2025, Chen spoke at a Veterans Support Group meeting in Baltimore. The topic was navigating VA claims for compartmented operations. She spoke for 20 minutes, explaining the process she had developed, the evidence she had gathered, and the institutional barriers she had overcome. At the end, a young veteran, an Army sergeant, mid-20s, missing his left arm, raised his hand. "Ma'am, I have a question. I deployed to Syria in 2023. My DD-214 says I was in Jordan. The VA denied my disability claim because they say I wasn't in combat. How do I fight this?" Chen looked at him, at his missing arm, at his eyes that had seen too much, and felt the familiar weight of responsibility. "Sergeant, here's what you do." And for the next 2 hours, Chen taught 30 veterans how to fight the system that had betrayed them. She taught them about metadata analysis, about FOIA requests, about documentation and evidence and persistence. She taught them what she had learned, that the capability to survive institutional betrayal isn't in the file. It's in refusing to accept the lies. It's in fighting for the truth even when the truth cost you everything. It's in knowing that you did right when the system failed. Chen returned to her apartment that night, opened her laptop, and began writing a guide. How to prove your service when the government says you weren't there. She would publish it online. She would distribute it to veterans organizations. She would make sure that the next soldier facing what she had faced would have a roadmap, because this was her legacy, not the exposure of one corrupt general, but the creation of a system that could not hide the truth forever. The families had their benefits. Chen had her disability rating. Webb had his pension. The injustice remained, but the truth had been told, and in the end, the truth was the only victory that mattered.